When he says it, he means it, and you don't get to bend it and twist it to what you want. To reach the lost Israelites, the message has to go to everybody, and then the whomsoever wills will come. The ones who he draws will come. By the way, knowledge meaning what? Having a relationship with the truth. Oh, you learned, and you got tons of information, but have you come into a relationship with truth?
How's that lighting on one? Like, how's that lighting on one? He's washed it out.
His face is always going to be flat.
Right.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. I don't know about you, but I've heard the live stream so many times that when I hear that respond in my head, the next words are, if you all rise for the sounding of the shofar. But we'll let Rabbi handle that. So welcome to day 4. Oh, thank you, Steve. Of the Deuteronomy readings. Just want to say it's really been a real pleasure to experience this with all of you, and your support has been really awesome, so I really appreciate it, and it's been a lot of fun to go through this, and we're almost done. Today is day 4, and then tomorrow, day 5. Really just crushing through this. It's pretty amazing how much ground you can cover when we have the time to read the Word. So definitely an encouragement for even myself to go back and take that time every day to read something. So we have 13 readers today. They are all accounted for. And then tomorrow we have 11, just to put that in your mind if you'd like to read tomorrow as we finish up the book of Deuteronomy. And so we will begin. And on the live stream, if you're new, we're going to read through chapters 22 to 28 today, and then hand over the mic to Rabbi, hopefully. And he will handle the Midrash, again, focusing on the aspects of how can we apply this in our lives. And I know we say that every day, and I know he says that all the time, but we forget and we need reminding, just as Peter tells us in his letter. So first up, we have Kirk. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Kirk, who has come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Amen. Okay, Kirk, you're going to go from chapter 22, verses 1 to 19.
When you see your brother's ox or his sheep straying away, you shall not hide yourself from them. Return them to your brother without fail. And if your brother is not near you, or if you do not know him, then you shall bring it to your own house, and it shall be with you until your brother seeks it. Then you shall return it to him. And so you do with his donkey, and so you do with his garment, and so you do with whatever your brother loses, which he has lost and you have found. You are not allowed to hide yourself. When you see your brother's donkey or his ox fall down on the way, you shall not hide yourself from them. Help him raise them without fail. A woman does not wear that which pertains to a man, nor does a man put on a woman's garment, for whoever does this is an abomination to Yahweh your Elohim. When you come upon a bird's nest along the way, in any tree or on the ground, with young ones or eggs, with the mother sitting on the young or on the eggs, do not take the mother with the young. Let the mother go without fail, and take the young for yourself, so that it might be well with you, and that you shall prolong your days. When you build a new house, then you shall make a parapet for your roof, so that you do not bring blood guilt on your house when one falls from it. Do not sow your vineyard with different kinds of seed, lest the yield of the seed which you have sown and the fruit of your vineyard be defiled. Do not plow with an ox and a donkey together. Do not put on a garment of different kinds of wool and linen together. Make tassels on the 4 corners of your garment with which you cover yourself. When any man takes a wife and shall go into her and shall hate her and shall make abusive charges against her and bring an evil name on her and say, I took this woman, and when I came to her I did not find her a maiden, then the father and mother of the young woman shall take and bring out the proof of the girl's maidenhood to the elders of the city at the gate. And the girl's father shall say to the elders, I gave my daughter to this man as wife, and he hates her. And see, he has made abusive charges against her, saying, I did not find your daughter a maiden, yet these are the proofs of my daughter's maidenhood. And they shall spread the garment before the elders of the city. And the elders of that city shall take that man and punish him, and fine him 100 pieces of silver, and give them to the father of the young woman, because he has brought an evil name on a maiden of Israel. And she is to be his wife, and he is not allowed to put her away all his days. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Kirk. Next up, just tell me your name. Eliana? Next up, we have Eliana. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Eliana, who's come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, you're going to take us from verse 20 to verse 8 of chapter 23.
But if the matter is true that the girl was not found a maiden, then they shall bring the girl out to the door of her father's house, and the men of her city shall stone her to death with stones, because she has done wickedness in Israel, to whore in her father's house. Thus she shall purge the evil from your midst. When a man is found lying with a woman married to a husband, then both of them shall die, both the man that lay with the woman and the woman. Thus you shall purge the evil from Israel. When a girl who is maiden is engaged to a husband, and a man finds her in the city and lies with her, then you shall bring them both out to the gate of that city, and shall stone them to death with stones, the girl because she did not cry out in the city, and the man because he has humbled his neighbor's wife. Thus you shall purge the evil from your midst. But if a man finds the girl who is engaged in the field, and the man takes hold of her and lies with her, then only the man who lay with her shall die. But you shall do no matter to the girl. The girl has no sin worthy of death, for the matter is like a man who rises against his neighbor and murders him, a being, for he found her in the field, and she cried out, the engaged girl, but without anyone to save her. When a man finds a girl who is maiden, who is not engaged, and he seizes her and lies with her, and they are found out, then the man who lay with her shall give to the girl's father 50 pieces of silver, and she is to be his wife because he has humbled her. He is not allowed to put her away all his days. A man does not take his father's wife, nor uncover his father's skirt. I read this before. Last beast. He who is wounded by crushing of testicles or whose penis is cut off shall not enter into the community of Yahweh. A mamzer shall not enter the community of Yahweh. Even a 10th generation of his shall not enter the community of Yahweh. An Ammonite or Moabite shall not enter the assembly of Yahweh. Even a 10th generation of them shall not enter into the assembly of Yahweh. Because they did not meet with bread and water on the way when you came out of Mizraim, and because they hired against you Bilam son of Beor from Pethor of Aram Naharaim to curse you. But Yahweh your Elohim refused to listen to Bilam, and Yahweh your Elohim turned the curse into a blessing for you, because Yahweh your Elohim loves you. Do not seek their peace nor their good all your days forever. Do not loathe an Edomite, for he is your brother. Do not loathe a Mitzrian, because you are a stranger in his land. The children of the 3rd generation bore to them, do not enter the assembly of Yahweh.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Eliana. Next up, we have Gwen. Just a friendly reminder to all readers to hold this close to your mouth as possible so we can make sure everybody hears, especially the live stream. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Gwen, who has come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of her hands. Amen. Amen. So you're going to take us from verse 9 in chapter 23 to the end of the chapter.
When the camp goes out against your enemies, then you shall guard yourself from every evil matter. When there is any man among you who is not clean because of an emission in the night, then he shall go outside the camp. Let him not come in the midst of the camp. And it shall be at the approach of evening that he bathes with water, and the sunset lets him come back into the midst of the camp. And you shall have a place outside the camp where you shall go out, and you shall have a sharp implement among your equipment, and when you sit down outside, you shall dig with it and turn the cover and cover your excrement. For Yahweh your Elohim walks in the midst of your camp to deliver you and give your enemies over to you. Therefore your camp shall be set apart, so that he does not see unclean matter among you, and shall turn away from you. You do not hand over his master the slave, who has escaped from his master to you. Let him dwell with you in the midst, in the place which he chooses within one of your gates, where it is pleasing to him. Do not oppress him. None of his daughters of Israel is to be a cult prostitute, nor any of the sons of Israel be a cult prostitute. Do not bring the harlot fee of a whore or the pay of a dog to the house of Yahweh, your Elohim, for any vowed offerings. For both of these are an abomination to Yahweh, your Elohim. Do not lend an interest to your brother, interest of silver, interest of food, or interest of whatever is lent at interest. For a foreigner you lend at interest, but to your brother you do not lend at interest, so that Yahweh your Elohim might bless you in all that you put your hand to in the land which you are entering to possess. When you make a vow to Yahweh your Elohim, do not delay to pay for it, for Yahweh your Elohim is certainly requiring it of you, and it shall be a sin in you. But when you abstain from vowing it, it is not a sin in you. That which is gone from your lips you shall guard and do, for you voluntarily vowed to Yahweh your Elohim that you have promised with your mouth. When you come into your neighbor's vineyard, you shall eat in the satisfaction of your desire. Do not put any of a receptacle of yours. When you come into your neighbor's standing grain, you shall pluck the heads with your hand. Do not use a sickle on your neighbor's standing grain.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Gwen. Next up, we have Ali. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Ali, who has come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Amen. So starting chapter 24, verses 1 through 15.
Thank you. Okay. When a man takes a wife and shall marry her, then it shall be, if she finds no favor in his eyes, because he has found a matter of uncoveredness in her, and he shall write her a certificate of divorce and put it in her hand and send her out of his house. And if she left his house and went and became another man's wife, and the latter husband shall hate her and write her a certificate of divorce and put it in her hand and send her out of his house, or when the latter husband dies who took her to be his wife, then her former husband who sent her away is not allowed to take her back to be his wife after she has been defiled, for that would be an abomination before Yahweh. And do not bring sin on the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you as an inheritance. When a man has taken a new wife, let him not go out into the army, nor let any matter be imposed upon him. He shall be exempt 1 year for the sake of his home, to rejoice with his wife whom he has taken. No one takes in pledge the lower or the upper millstone, for he would be taking a life in pledge. When a man is found kidnapping any of his brothers of the children of Israel and treats him harshly or sells him, then that kidnapper shall die. Thus you shall purge the evil from your midst. Take heed in an outbreak of leprosy to diligently guard and do according to all that the priests and the Levites teach you. As I have commanded them, so you shall guard to do. Remember what Yahweh your Elohim did to Miriam on the way when you came out of Mitzrayim. When you lend your brother a loan, do not go into his house to get his pledge. Stand outside and let the man to whom you lend bring the pledge out to you. And if the man is poor, do not sleep with his pledge. By all means, return the pledge to him at sundown, and he shall sleep in his own garment, and shall bless you. and it shall be righteousness to you before Yahweh, your Elohim. Do not oppress a hired servant who is poor and needy, of your brothers or of your strangers who are in your land within your gates. Give him his wages on the same day, and do not let the sun go down on it, for he is poor and lifts up his being to it, so that he does not cry out against you to Yahweh, and it shall be sin in you.
Amen. Thank you, Ali. Next up we have David. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless David, who has come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Amen. So we're going to finish chapter 24, verses 16 through 22, and then begin in 25 all the way to verse 10. Okay, so 16.
Fathers are not to put to death for their children, and children not put to death for their fathers. Each is to die for his own sin. Do not twist the right ruling of a stranger or the fatherless, nor take the garment of a widow. But you shall remember that you were a slave in Mitzrayim, and that Yahweh your Elohim ransomed you from there. Therefore I am commanding you to do this word. When you reap your harvest in your field, and have forgotten a sheaf in the field, do not go back to get it. Let it be for the stranger, for the fatherless, and for the widow, so that Yahweh your Elohim might bless you in all the work of your hands. When you beat your olive trees, do not examine the branch behind you. Let it be for the stranger, for the fatherless, and for the widow. When you gather the grapes of your vineyard, do not glean behind you. Let it be for the stranger, for the fatherless, and for the widow. And you shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Mitzrayim. Therefore I am commanding you to do this word. When there is a dispute between men, then they shall come unto judgment, and they shall be judged, and the righteous declared righteous, and the wrongdoer declared wrong. And it shall be, if the wrongdoer is to be struck, that the judge shall cause him to lie down and be struck in his presence with the number of blows according to his wrong. 40 strikes he gives him, but no more, lest he strike him with many more blows than these, and your brother be degraded before your eyes. Do not muzzle an ox while it is threshing. When brothers dwell together, and one of them has died and has no son, the widow of the dead man shall not become a stranger outside. Her husband's brother does go into her, and shall take her as his wife, and perform the duty of a husband's brother to her. And it shall be that the firstborn son which she bears does rise up for the name of his dead brother, so that his name is not blotted out of Israel. But if the man does not desire to take his brother's wife, then let his brother's wife go up to the gate to the elders and say, my husband's brother refuses to raise up a name to his brother in Israel. He does not agree to perform the duty of my husband's brother. The elders of his city shall then call him and speak to him, and he shall stand and say, I have no desire to take her. Then his brother's wife shall come to him in the presence of the elders and remove his sandal from his foot and shall spit in his face and answer and say, thus it is done to the man who does not build up his brother's house. And in Israel his name shall be called the house of him who had his sandal removed.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, David. How about that for a last name? David, for me. Thus it is done to the man who has not built up his brother's house. Not a good precedent to have. Yeah. Next up, we have Olivier. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. May he bless Olivier, who has come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Amen.
When men fight one with another, a man on his brother, and the wife of one shall draw near to rescue her husband from the hand of the one striking him, and shall put out her hand and take hold of him by the genitals. Then you shall cut off her hand. Your eye does not pardon. You shall not have in your bag different weight, a heavy and a light. You shall not have in your house differing measures, a large and a small. You shall have a perfect and right weight, a perfect and right measure, so that they prolong your days on the soil which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you. For all who do this, on all who do unrighteously, are an abomination to Yahweh your Elohim. Remember what Amalek did to you on the ways as you were coming out of Mizraim, how he met you on the way and attacked your back, all the feeble ones in your rear when you were tired and weary. And he did not fear Elohim. Therefore it shall be, when Yahweh your Elohim has given you rest from your enemies all around, in the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you to possess as an inheritance, that you blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under the heavens. Do not forget. And it shall be, when you come into the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you as an inheritance, and you possess it and dwell in it, that you shall take some of the first fruits of the soils which you bring from your land that Yahweh your Elohim is giving you, and shall put it in a basket and go to the place where Yahweh your Elohim chooses to make his name dwell there. And you shall come to the one who is priest in those days, and say to him, I shall declare today to Yahweh your Elohim that I have come to the land which Yahweh swore to our fathers to give us. And the priest shall take the basket from your hand and place it before the slaughter place of Yahweh your Elohim. And you shall answer and say before Yahweh your Elohim, my father was a perishing Aramean, and he went down to Mizraim and sojourned there with a few men. And there he became a nation, great, mighty, and numerous. But the Mizrahites did evil to us, and afflicted us, and imposed hard labor on us. Then we cried out to Yahweh Elohim of our fathers, and Yahweh heard our voice, and saw our affliction, on our soul, on our toil, on our oppression. And Yahweh brought us out of Mizraim with a strong hand, and with an outstretched arm, with great fear, and with signs and wonders. And he brought us to this place, and has given us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. I'm on 9.
Oh, yeah, my bad.
And now, see, I have brought the first fruit of the land which you, O Yahweh, have given me. Then you shall place it before Yahweh your Elohim, and bow down before Yahweh your Elohim. And shall rejoice in all the good which Yahweh your Elohim has given to you on your house, you and the Levite and the stranger who is amongst you. When you have completed tithing all the tithes of your increase in the third year, which is the year of tithing, and have given it to the Levite, to the stranger, to the fatherless, and to the widow, and they have eaten within your gates and have been satisfied. Then you shall say before Yahweh your Elohim, I have put away the set-apart portion from my house, and also have given it to the Levite, unto the stranger, unto the fatherless, unto the widow, according to all your command which you have commanded me. I have not transgressed your commands, nor I have forgotten. I have not eaten any of it when in mourning, nor have removed any of it for the unclean use, nor given of it for the dead.
Finish this one, yeah.
Okay. You stop. Okay. I have obeyed the voice of Yahweh your Elohim. I have done according to all that you have commanded me.
Amen. Amen. You know what? And I think possibly, and I think Rabbi might agree, that it's one of those times where if the Ruach needs us to hear something twice, and considering this portion is something that we've been hitting on a lot in terms of the third tithe and taking care of our poor, well, then we're going to hear it again. So next up we have Wesley. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Wesley, who's come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Amen. So you're going to take us from 26:10 all the way to 26:19.
And now, see, I have brought the first fruits of the land which you, O Yahweh, have given me, and then you shall place it before Yahweh your Elohim, and bow down before Yahweh your Elohim, and shall rejoice in all the good which Yahweh your Elohim has given you, and your house, and you, and the Levite, and the stranger who is among you. When you have completed tithing all the tithe of your increase in the 3rd year, which is the year of tithing, and have given it to the Levite, and to the stranger, and to the fatherless, and to the widow, and they have eaten within your gates, and have been satisfied, then you shall say before Yahweh your Elohim, I have put away the set-apart portion from my house, and I have given it to the Levite, and to the stranger, and to the fatherless, and to the widow, according to all your command, which you have commanded me. I have not transgressed your commands, nor have I forgotten. I have not eaten any of it when in mourning. I have removed any of it for any unclean use, nor given any of it for the dead. I have obeyed the voice of Yahweh my Elohim. I have done according to all that you have commanded me. Look from your set-apart dwelling place from the heavens, and bless your people, Israel, in the land which you have given us, as you swore to our fathers, a land flowing with milk and honey. Today, Yahweh your Elohim is commanding you to do these laws and right rulings, and you shall guard and do them with all your heart and with all your being. You have today caused Yahweh to proclaim to be your Elohim, and to walk in his ways and guard his laws and his commands and his right rulings, and to obey his voice. And Yahweh has caused you to proclaim today to be his people, a treasured possession, as he has spoken to you, and to guard all his commands, so as to set you high above all nations which he has made, for a praise, and for a name, and for esteem, and for you to be a set-apart people to Yahweh your Elohim, as he has spoken.
Thank you, Wes. Next up we have Donna. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Donna, who has come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family, and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of her hands. Amen. Amen. So we'll start chapter 27, verses 1 to 13. Yep.
Moshe and the elders of Israel commanded the people, keep every command I am giving you today. At the time you cross the Jordan into the land that Yahweh your Elohim is giving you, you must set up large stones and cover them with plaster. Write all the words of this law on the stones after you cross to enter the land that Yahweh your Elohim is giving you, a land flowing with milk and honey, as the Yahweh, the Elohim of your fathers, has promised you. When you have crossed the Jordan, you are to set up these stones on Mount Ebal, as I am commanding you today, and you are to cover them with plaster. Build an altar of stones there to Yahweh your Elohim. You must not use any iron tool on them. Use uncut stones to build the altar of Yahweh your Elohim, and offer burnt offerings to Yahweh your Elohim on it. There you are to sacrifice fellowship offerings, eat, and rejoice in the presence of Yahweh your Elohim. Write clearly all the words of this law on the plastered stones. Moshe and the Levitical priests spoke to all Israel. Be silent, Israel, and listen. This day you have become the people of Yahweh your Elohim. Obey Yahweh your Elohim and follow his commands and statutes I am giving you today. On that day, Moshe commanded the people, when you have crossed the Jordan, these tribes will stand on Mount Gerizim to bless the people. Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Joseph, and Benjamin. And these tribes will stand on Mount Ebal to deliver the curse. Reuben, Gad, Asher, Zebulun, Dan, and Naphtali. That's it.
Thank you. Yeah, we're just getting into the good part. So we're going to do something that we did on the Torah study portion. It just occurred to me, we just finished this a couple weeks ago. So when Jared is reading here verses 14 to 26, the end of the chapter, you can see that there's these curses, and it says, cursed is the so-and-so. We don't want to be that so-and-so. And all the people shall answer and say, Amen. So Jared will read through the cursed is the part, and then when he gets to the part where it says, and all the people shall answer and say, all of you together will say, Amen. And then you'll continue, and we'll go to the end of the chapter. Sound good? He who blessed, Amen. See, he who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Jared, who has come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Amen. Okay, so here we go, 14 to 26.
And the Levites shall speak with a loud voice and say to all the men of Israel, cursed is the man who makes a carved or molded image, an abomination to Yah, the work of the hands of the craftsman, and sets it up in secret. And all the people shall answer and say, Amen. Cursed is he who makes light of his father or his mother, and all the people shall say, Amen. Cursed is he who moves his neighbor's boundary, and all the people shall say, Amen. Cursed is he who misleads the blind in the way, and all the people shall say, Amen. Cursed is he who twists the right rulings of the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, and all the people shall say, Amen. Cursed is he who lies with his father's wife, because he has uncovered his father's bed, and all the people shall say, Amen. Cursed is he who lies with any beast, and all the people shall say, Amen. Cursed is he who lies with his sister, the daughter of his father, or the daughter of his mother, and all the people shall say, Amen. Cursed is he who lies with his mother-in-law, and all the people shall say, Amen. Cursed is he who strikes his neighbor secretly, and all the people shall say, Amen. Cursed is he who takes a bribe to strike an innocent being, and all the people shall say, Amen. Cursed is he who does not establish the words of the Torah, and all the people shall say, Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Jared. That was very powerful. Thank you, everyone, for participating. Okay, next up we have Candace, and I'll bring the mic to you, Candace. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Candace, who has come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family, and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of her hands. Amen. You're going to take us chapter 28, verses 1 to 14.
And it shall be, if you diligently obey the voice of Yahweh your Elohim, to guard to do all his commands, which I command you today, that Yahweh your Elohim shall make you high above all nations of the earth. And all these Baruchah shall come upon you and overtake you, if you obey the voice of Yahweh your Elohim. Baruch are you in the city, and Baruch are you in the field. Baruch is the fruit of your body, and the fruit of your ground, and the fruit of your livestock, the increase of your cattle, and the offspring of your flocks. Baruch is your basket and your kneading bowl. Baruch are you when you come in, and Baruch are you when you go out. Yahweh causes your enemies who rise against you to be smitten before your face. They come out against you one way and flee before you 7 ways. Yahweh commands the Baruchah on you in your storehouses and in all to which you put your hand, and shall baruch you in the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you. Yahweh establishes you as a kadosh people to himself, as he has sworn to you, if you guard the commands of Yahweh your Elohim and walk in his ways. And all the people of the earth shall see that the name of Yahweh is called upon you, and they shall be afraid of you. And Yahweh shall make you to have plenty of what is good in the fruit of your body, and in the fruit of your livestock, and in the fruit of your ground, in the land of which Yahweh swore to your fathers to give you. Yahweh opens to you his good treasure, the Shemayim, to give the rain to your land in its season, and to baruch all the work of your hands. And you shall lend to many nations, but you do not borrow. And Yahweh shall make you the head and not the tail. And you shall be only on top and not be beneath, if you obey the commands of Yahweh your Elohim, which I command you today to guard and do. And do not turn aside from any of the words which I am commanding you today, right or left, to go after other mighty ones to serve them.
Thank you, Candace. Get a hand, Ollie, if you don't mind, or David. So let's see. So yeah, we have our final 3 readers here for today, and then we'll have 11 for tomorrow. And just in case you were wondering, Candace was reading the Baruch. That is, in your probably ISR, it says blessed. And so yeah, that's the Baruch, that's the blessing. So, for example, the Motzi or the Kiddush, when we say Baruch atah Yahweh, that's, blessed are you, Yahweh. So just if you're wondering, that's the Hebraic translation there for blessed, Baruch. Next up we have Paula, as we continue Deuteronomy 28, also known as the blessings and the cursings. We just went through the blessings, and now we get the stick after the carrot. And Rabbi teaches, as we know, that there's only about 14 verses of blessings of carrot, and then we've got another 54 verses of stick. So something to keep in mind, that there are a lot more that we should be focusing on, maybe what not to do, than the little bit of the carrot. That said, we have Paula up here. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Paula, who has come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of her hands. Amen. Amen. So you'll take us from verse 15 to verse 29 on the next page.
And it shall be, if you do not obey the voice of Yahweh your Elohim, to guard, to do all his commands and his laws, which I command you today, that all these curses shall come upon you and overtake you. Cursed are you in the city, and cursed are you in the field. Cursed is your basket and your kneading bowl. Cursed is the fruit of your body and the fruit of your land, the increase of your cattle and the offspring of your flocks. Cursed are you when you come in, and cursed are you when you go out. Yahweh sends on you the curse, the confusion, and the rebuke in all that you set your hand to do, until you are destroyed and until you perish quickly because of the evil of your doings by which you have forsaken me. Yahweh makes the plague cling to you until he has consumed you from the land which you are going to possess. Yahweh strikes you with wasting disease, and with inflammation, and with burning, and with extreme heat, and with the sword, and with the blight, and with mildew. And they shall pursue you until you perish. And your heavens which are over your head shall be bronze, and the earth which is under you iron. Yahweh makes the rain of your hand powder and dust. From the heavens it comes down on you until you are destroyed. Yahweh causes you to be defeated before your enemies. You go out one way against them and flee 7 ways before them. And you shall become a horror to all the reigns of the earth. And your carcasses shall be food for all the birds of the heavens and the beasts of the earth, with no one to frighten them away. Yahweh shall strike you with the boils of Mitzrayim, with tumors, with the scab, and with the itch, from which you are unable to be healed. Yahweh shall strike you with madness and blindness and bewilderment of heart. And you shall be groping at noon, as a blind man gropes in darkness, and not prosper in your ways. and you shall be only oppressed and plundered all the days, with no one to save you.
Thank you. Thank you, Paula. Yeah, that's good. Next up, we have Barbara. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Barbara, who's come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of her hands. Amen. Amen. So we'll continue, verses 30 to 46.
You become engaged to a wife, but another man does lie with her. You build a house, but do not dwell in it. You plant a vineyard, but do not use its fruit. Your ox is slaughtered before your eyes, but you do not eat of it. Your donkey is violently taken from before you, and it is not given back to you. Your sheep are given to your enemies, with no one to save them. Your sons and your daughters are given to another people, and your eyes look and fail for them all day long, and your hand is powerless. A people whom you have not known, eat the fruit of your land and all your labors, and you shall be only oppressed and crushed all the days. And you shall be maddened because the legs with evil boils, of which you are unable to be healed, and from the sole of your foot to the top of your head. Yahuwah brings you and the sovereign whom you set over you to a nation which neither you nor your fathers have known, and there you shall serve other mighty ones, wood and stone. Thus you shall become an astonishment, a proverb and a mockery among all the peoples to which Yahuwah drives you. You take much seed out into the field, but gather little in, for the locust consumes it. You plant vineyards and shall labor, but you neither drink of the wine nor gather, for the worm eats it. You have olive trees in all your border, and do not anoint with oil, for your olives drop off. You bring forth sons and daughters, but they are not with you, for they go into captivity. Locusts possess all your trees and the fruit of your ground. The sojourner who is among you rises higher and higher above you, and you come down lower and lower. He lends to you, but you do not lend to him. He is the head, and you are the tail. And all these curses shall come upon you, and they shall pursue and overtake you until you are destroyed, because you did not obey the voice of Yahuwah your Elohim to guard his commands and his laws, which he commanded you. And they shall be upon you for a sign and for a wonder, and on your seed forever.
Amen. Thank you so much, Barbara. Next up, and our final reader for day 4. So sad, tomorrow is the final day of the readings. It's been really just such a blessing, and thank you to all the readers again, is Josh. He will take us to the end of chapter 28. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Josh, who has come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Amen. So take us from verse 47 all the way to 68 to finish the day.
Because you did not serve Yah, your Elohim, with joy and gladness of heart for all the plenty, you shall serve your enemies, whom Yah sends against you, in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in need of all. And he shall put a yoke of iron on your neck until he has destroyed you. Yah shall bring a nation against you from afar, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flies. A nation whose language you shall not understand. A fierce-looking nation which shall show no regard for the elderly, nor show favor to the young. And they shall eat the fruit of your livestock and the fruit of your land until you are destroyed. They leave you no grain, nor new wine, nor oil, nor the increase of your cattle, or the offspring of your flocks, until they have destroyed you. And they shall besiege you at all your gates till your high and fenced walls, in which you are trusting, come down in all your land. And they shall besiege you at all your gates in all your land, which Yah, your Elohim, has given you. And you shall eat the fruit of your own body, the flesh of your sons and your daughters, whom Yah, your Elohim, has given you, in the siege and distress in which your enemies distress you. The man among you who is tender and who is very delicate, his eye is evil against his brother, against the wife of his bosom, and against the rest of his children whom he leaves behind, against giving any of them the flesh of his children that he eats, because it is all that has been left to him in the siege and distress with which your enemies distress you in all your gates. The tender and the delicate woman among you, who has not tried to set the sole of her foot on the ground because of her delicateness and tenderness, her eye is evil against the husband of her bosom, and against her son and against her daughter, and against her seed which comes out from between her feet, and her children whom she bears, for she eats them in secret for lack of all, in the siege and distress which with your enemy distresses you in all your gates. If you do not guard to do all the words of this Torah that are written in this book, to fear this esteemed and awesome name, Yah, your Elohim, then Yah shall bring upon you and your descendants extraordinary plagues, great and lasting plagues, and grievous and lasting sickness. And he shall bring back on you all the diseases of Mitzrayim, of which you were afraid, and they shall cling to you. Also, every sickness and every plague which is not written in the book of this Torah, Yah does bring upon you until you are destroyed. And you shall be left with few men, although you had become as numerous as the stars of the heavens, because you did not obey the voice of Yah, your Elohim. And it shall be that as Yah rejoiced over you to do good and increase you, so Yah does rejoice over you to destroy you and lay you waste. And you shall be plucked from off the land which you go to possess. And Yah shall scatter you among all peoples, from one end of the earth to the other. And there you shall serve other mighty ones, which neither you nor your fathers have known, wood and stone. And among those nations you are to find no rest, nor have a resting place for the sole of your foot, but there Yah shall give you a trembling heart and failing eyes and sorrow of being. And your life shall be hanging in suspense before you, and you shall fear night and day, and not be certain of your life. In the morning you say, "Oh, that it were evening," and at evening you say, "Oh, that it were morning," because of the fear of your heart with which you fear, and because of the sight which your eyes see. And Yah shall bring you back to Mitzrayim in ships, by a way of which I said to you, you are never to see it again. And there you shall be sold to your enemies as male and female slaves, but no one to buy.
Amen. Amen. Thank you to all the readers. There you go. This is yours for reading today. Really appreciated that, and we'll recite the closing blessing. I mean, everyone has such a unique style. I really appreciate it. I will say, whether it's time and chance or specifically the Ruach, I don't know about you, but we might have to get Josh every feast to read the end of chapter 28 because that was amazing. So Josh, thank you for that. And he wasn't able to read yesterday, came up again today, and I'm really glad because that was something else. So thank you again to all readers. We'll recite the closing blessing. Baruch atah Yahweh Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Yahweh noten haTorah. Amen. Blessed are you, Yahweh Elohim, King of the universe, who has given us a Torah of truth and has planted eternal life in our midst. Blessed are you, Yahweh, giver of the Torah. Amen. Amen. So it's time for the Midrash portion. And as we know that we're learning in the Are You Covenanted series here that the context is so important. So really excited to get into this Deuteronomy 28 with none other than our Rabbi, Steve Berkson.
All right, Boker Tov. That should be about right. Okay, so who's going to be our first reader? Well, I heard David say that sometimes it's good to hear something more than once. In case you didn't think I was paying attention. Are we missing a mic? I had left it up there yesterday, so it was on the desk. I mean, I handed it to whoever was sitting at the desk, and they put it down in front of them or something, so I don't know what happened to it. Nope. Please stand by. Due to technical difficulties. Well, we got it. Actually, Kurt Meyer's got the mic. They've already brought it to him. You're pretty sneaky back there. I see how it works. All right, so today we're in Heart of the Matter 65. Woo, one person thought that was funny. Woo. All right, we're starting in chapter 22. Okay, so we're almost done, aren't we? Wow. I mean, this, you know what, we do this every year. And not only do we do it every year, but we do it twice every year because we just finished Deuteronomy right before we get here. And here's the really cool part. It never gets old. I mean, it just never gets old. It's amazing. Awesome. All right. So what we want to do now is we want to go have a discussion about the Torah portion. And this really can be more midrashic than just having people ask me questions. But I know we have a lot of people here that are relatively new. So I have been doing most of the answering the questions, but just an encouragement that if somebody says something or asks a question and you have something you'd like to add to that or whatever, you can certainly welcome to raise your hand and we can have the mics go back and forth and deal with those kind of things. And that way we can have a little bit of a discussion, but I will certainly oversee that. Okay, now we don't have to do things chronologically necessarily, but if anybody would like to get us started, I know Kurt's got the mic, so Kurt, go ahead and get us started.
All right. Question is, in chapter 25, verses 5 to 10, I can see that these verse and law is more of a cultural custom, but the principle of the verse is in regards to honoring our widows. How can we apply this in our time?
What verse again? Chapter 20?
25, 5 through 10.
5 through 10. Okay, as far as the levirate marriage thing and that kind of stuff, okay. And by the way, I did notice that, as always, the fun part of chapter 25 got nailed again by having a woman have to read it. That was fabulous. Eliana, great job. It happens every time. It's amazing. You can almost guarantee it. It's like right there, gonna happen. Okay, so now the levirate marriage is not something
Look, and nothing personal to my family, but my wife made it very clear that if I died, she was not going to marry any of my brothers. Okay, just. So if you're watching, sorry. Okay, so she said, just in case you were wondering. Now let's understand what's going on here. What is the reason for the levirate marriage? It's right there in the chapter. What was the purpose of this marriage? To do what? To keep a name and the inheritance going down through that line. Do we have that issue today? No, we're not dealing with the land and the inheritance. So you got to understand that there was, and there still is in human nature, a greediness, a desire to have more than your brother, etc. And so this is just like the ladies that said to Moses, we don't have any other brothers or anything to keep going down this line for my father. And Yahweh said that, well, then you need to give them the inheritance. Because otherwise what would happen is one tribe eventually would marry the women and take away their inheritances, and next thing you know, they get real big and the other tribe gets real small. Okay? And so there always needed to be somebody to continue the inheritance because it had to do with portioning out of the land from an inheritance point of view. So when you ask the question about this type of a situation for the widows, yes, you can certainly see there's a second part of this. Today, I'm sorry, I thought I was going through a teaching. In today's times, we don't have the same situation they had where it would be much more challenging for women to provide for themselves, to keep themselves safe against literally wild beasts and other things that could be out there. And so this was a way of protecting our widows and providing for them. Well, ladies, I know, and we talked about, with Curtis and everything last night in the teaching, that we absolutely know that you're fully competent and have total ability to provide these things for yourself. That there's nothing you can't do as far as if you needed to do it. And so there's, not that you wouldn't want it, and there are some needs there, but it's not the same as it was then. To be a widow back then and have no one to provide for you was really going to be a challenge. And you would have a very high likelihood of not making it. Which is why there's so much in this Torah portion telling you to leave things for the widow, make sure they're taking care of the widow. Because they were going to have a real struggle. And not just because of finances, just because of the whole societal thing and the nature of the way things were in those days. So anyway, that's the answer to that question. Anybody else want to say anything about that? Okay. Where's the mic? Okay, coming around, Steve Waffle.
Okay. I was going to ask here in 22:1, where it talks about when you see your your brother's sheep or ox go astray, or you return it to him and stuff like that. To me, it's how do you apply that today? It seems like a lot of people today, when they see something that's not their possession or not their what they feel is their business, a lot of people section themselves off from one another to avoid being responsible. And so I think that's a good lesson for us, is that we need to take responsibility for our brother and his possessions to help him where we may see him stumble.
Amen. Well, look, first of all, let's remember the verse starts out with, and the chapter starts out with, when you see your brother's stuff. So if you see other people's stuff, it might not be a bad idea, depending on the situation, just to leave it there so that when you come back looking for it, it's still there. Okay? It also might not be a bad idea maybe to take it if you have an appropriate place to put it in terms of giving it to, if you're in a place of business, you can give it to the business owner or something. But if it's your brother's and you know it's his, a lot of these things that come up in these chapters have to do with, well, first of all, you can't just take it and pretend that you don't know it's your brother's. Then the other side of it, which is what Steve's addressing here, is, well, you also can't decide, well, it's too much work. I don't want to take it home. I don't want to be responsible for it. I don't want to have to find my brother. I don't want to, and so you just say, well, I'm just going to leave it and let somebody else take it. And so this has a lot to do with the concept of bearing one another's burdens, in a more literal sense here, because it's an item or an animal in this case. So bearing one another's burden. If you see it's your brother's and you know it's your brother's, that's kind of the concept. When you see your brother's ox, it means that you know who it is and who it belongs to, and etc., wandering around. And then you think, I got to bring it back to his property, and if he's not there, then I have to find a way to hold on to it myself, and blah, 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 blah. That's too much work. Is that showing love to your brother? No. He's telling you have to show love to your brother. Just you know what? It's to do unto others, because you would want him to do the same thing for you, wouldn't you? Amen? Okay, who's next? Okay, where's the mic? Dale? Okay. Janet?
Sorry, it was off. Yes, Devarim chapter 22, verse 5. A woman does not wear that which pertains to a man, nor does a man put on a woman's garment. I know you touched on that in one of the Torah studies.
Yeah,
So
it means stay out of each other's dressers. I'm kidding. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I just woke up. What do you expect?
I truly appreciate your sense of humor. You're really funny. So I see a lot of ladies here wearing long skirts, and I don't. I have just a couple in my dress. So should I change my whole wardrobe to, I guess, match this part of the scripture? That's one of my first questions. And then Devarim, I have my notes here, 23:14.
Okay, while you're looking for the other question, can the Shah machine be ready to escort her out for wearing pants? Okay, you can finish your question though before we do that.
Oh my goodness. 23:14, it says, "For Yahweh your Elohim walks in the midst of your camp to deliver you and give your enemies over to you. Therefore your camp shall be set apart, so that he does not see unclean matter among you." I'm just trying to figure out how to put this. How do I apply this in my life right now?
What verse number is that? Where is that?
23:14.
23:14. Okay.
Yes. Any unclean matter. For some reason, my brain just went there. I'm always constantly listening to teachings or even Bible in MP3, even in the house or while doing errands or stuff or driving around, and sometimes even in the restaurant. I know it sounds gross, but should I be more careful whenever I open the scripture and, in terms of the activities that I'm doing or where I am?
Yeah, you probably don't want your scriptures to be where this kind of stuff is going on. You don't need to be sitting on the throne, so to speak, going, okay, Deuteronomy, I don't have a sharp instrument. I don't know how am I going to do this. No. Okay, well, first of all, let's deal with the chapter 22 question. It is not clear in chapter 22 what it means specifically about what pertains to a man and what pertains to a woman in terms of garments. It says, "Nor does a man put on a woman's garment." Now, it says a woman is not to wear that which pertains to a man. That doesn't necessarily specifically say garment, but it implies that, I guess, because the next part says that a man's not to put on a woman's garment. So we have a couple of possibilities, and sometimes we make an educated guess. Using our best understanding with our scholarly study that we do. After all, we've been doing this at least 5 or 10 minutes, so we should, because some of us will make all these educated guesses with no real education. But, okay, so that which pertains to a man and that which pertains to a woman. First of all, let's remember that, ladies, you've been in churches where it was a sin to wear pants and all kinds of things like that. It doesn't say that anywhere in here. Because basically, except for the priests, when they were doing certain things, nobody was wearing pants. They had robes and other things and certain types of, but it wasn't like pants like you see them today. Can we agree? All right. The first guess possibility, and I'm not saying it's more important than the second guess, but the first one I'll give you is that it's talking about gender confusion issues. Let's not dress in such a way as somebody would look at you and not know what you are. Okay, so by the way, ladies, most of you wear pants that if I saw you in them, I would have no doubt that you're not a man. That's not an insult. I'm just saying they're not cut the same. They don't fit the same. So it's just not the same thing. I don't even care. I don't care if it's blue jeans. I don't care if it's something more, basic, nothing fancy. But ladies' jeans don't look like men's jeans, and they don't fit like them. And so there's really no confusion there. So it's not about pants, all right? And it's not about, of course, the other side around is that a man should not be wearing a woman's garment. Now you have some of these issues where, like Paul says, well, a man should not cover his head. Well, that's not what it says. It actually says he shouldn't veil his face. In other words, the idea of doing what a woman would do, especially in temple prostitution. Again, if you didn't look at the Greek, you wouldn't know that. You would think, he's picking on Jews wearing something on top of their head. No, he's not. He's not picking on the kippah. What he's doing is saying that it has something to do with prostitution and gender confusion issues. Because there were also male prostitutes in the temples, not just female prostitutes. So the first possible answer here is gender confusion issues. Don't do that which would confuse someone looking at you. The second possibility is that we're dealing with a group of people here that have had a preparation to go to war. They've been to war. They've had things to deal with fighting. And so it says, look, the women are not to be putting on the men's armor and doing other things that pertains to a man. Okay, I'll give you a third possibility after that, which is certainly another possibility here. And then the third possibility is, and this is not clear in Scripture, and I don't want to start a big, because you know how much I like to hate of, I don't avoid conflict and stuff. So I won't stir it up. Yes, I will. It's possible it's talking about even things as controversial as whether women should be wearing tzitzit. Because if tzitzit are for men, then it's something pertaining to a man. In Numbers 15, I know all of you, you Hebrew biblical scholars, but it says, children of Israel. I don't know, do you know what the Hebrew says? It says, Bnei Yisrael. Now that could be children, it could be sons, okay? And so it could be pertaining to the man. Actually, I'm going to get some of you upset, and some of you have heard me say this a lot of times. There's not a single verse that you read today or any day that was directed at the women. Now, there was stuff that was for the women, but the instruction was given to the man, back to the vertical alignment that Curtis was teaching about, and the men would share with the women. The ladies, you understand that? All instruction was given down the chain. And then when Yeshua was here in the flesh, who was it given to? Yeshua, who then gave it to the men, who gave it to the ladies. Now, sometimes the ladies were in the audience as well, but I'm just saying is, in terms of instruction, that's sort of the alignment that you have. And so even though there are a lot of commandments that deal with women, and including this one, it says that women are not supposed to do, and the men were supposed to know this, so they can help the ladies know this is what Yahweh said. Okay? And then ladies, it's not because Yahweh can't talk to you directly. Some of you can think, well, he can talk to me himself. It's about maintaining an alignment. And it brings structure into the place. Okay? And also, as we've talked about a lot with the alignment, it puts the proper burden of responsibility. Okay? And that's really important as well. Okay, so hopefully, did that answer your question? Okay. By the way, with the tzitzit question, or the point that I made, that's why I will insist, men, especially if you've done the 8 declarations, and I didn't even talk about that at all before when we were doing the mikvah, but men, if you've gone in that water, you better be wearing your tzitzit. That's part of the obligations of being a citizen in the kingdom of Elohim. So I don't want any excuses. You wear them. Well, I'm not sure. Do I wear them? Yes, you wear them all the time. You don't have to wear them when you're sleeping. You have to wear them when they're available for someone to see them, especially you or others, to remind you to keep the commandments. That's the point. Not really necessary while your eyes are closed and you're in dreamland. Although some of you have some dreams, you probably need to wear your tzitzit. I apologize. Okay, so wear them. Now, of course, you're not going to wear them when you're swimming because they're just going to get ruined and stuff, and you can't really see them well when you swim. But I mean, generally speaking, during all everyday activities and work, etc. Now, of course, if you have a job where it's dangerous to have anything hanging from your clothing, wear them but tuck them in because you don't need them getting caught in machinery or something that would be dangerous. Okay? And some of you have jobs where Caesar has said you have to wear a uniform and you cannot alter that uniform in any way, shape, or form. Fine, wear them and tuck them in until you get off the job. But wear them. Okay, it doesn't specifically say that you have to wear them where they can be seen. I just think that it's kind of pointless if nobody can see them. Because you have a large part of the Jewish community that wears them tucked in. Well, See, I think that when I'm standing here, you can see mine a lot easier than I can. Because I've got to turn and twist my neck and look down, but you're looking straight at me, peripheral vision, you can see my tzitzit. So when I wear them, it's for you almost more than it is for me. And when you wear yours, it's for me more than you. It's as a community, that's how we help each other, remind each other to keep the commandments. And of course, the verse says so that you remember to keep the commandments. But I think that you could be more collective. We wear the tzitzit so that all of us can be reminded. Amen? Okay, so just wanted to throw that out there. Okay, who's next? The second question was about, got it, okay. Well, that was kind of messy and I wanted to avoid it, so. Look, we don't have these challenges, with dealing with our, bowel movements and all these other things, because we have bathrooms and we have all these kind of things. But you know what? It wouldn't be a bad idea to understand. He's trying to talk about being set apart, not creating all kinds of a problem which would attract flies and this and that and the other thing. So I would say a way to take this as a metaphor would be to, make sure that when you leave the place that you were doing your business, that you left it in working order and good for the next person to come. Okay, this is more about sanitation and the camp, and not bringing that kind of stuff in the camp where it could attract things that you don't want coming into your camp. And so you dig a hole and you bury it. Okay, that's more the point here, because the camp, it says, is to be set apart. Kadosh, you don't need that stuff in your camp. And you can see in Europe later on when we get, obviously Europe wasn't going on in the way this is here in the Middle East and where Israel was, but when you get the nations forming and we get into the Middle Ages, people are just dumping all this stuff right in the street and doing it right in the street, and everything is everywhere. That's just the way it was. People are taking the pots that they used to, for that, and they would just dump them out the window into the street and things like that. It was awful. And he's saying, you will know by the time you get to that age that that is not good. It's not sanitary. It leads to all kinds of disease and things and all kinds of problems. And so I think that's one of the things. And by the way, it says that you should have your sharp item with you in your pack and ready to do these things. You know what? You should be prepared if you go into a restroom or anywhere that you should know where there might be a plunger if there's a problem or anything like that, because somebody else may have left you a problem. Okay? Because it's not always you. You may show up and it's already there. There's a problem. And so let's take care of those things. Because I know you all have the same experience. You walk into a public restroom and you say, these people have houses, right? And they do this in their house? I'm not even going to get into it, but you've seen all the different things they do. And you wonder, how could you not know you just did that everywhere? Because I'm sure they don't do that in their house. And so it amazes me that anybody could do that. Could make the kind of mess that you find sometimes in the restrooms. And then on top of it, I know accidents happen, whatever, they don't clean it up. So this is Yahweh talking about being sanitary, okay, and having the camp become sanitary. Okay, David.
Yeah, literally do not do as they do.
Okay, you just needed to go there.
So the tzitziot, just as a kind of something special about this week, is being able to see each other. I don't know about the other men, but it's really just amazing to be in this community. Everybody is seeing each other, because there'll be times that Sami and I will be walking in the street, and I'll see out of the corner of my eye somebody, like a man with something like tzitzit, and it's like a lanyard, or another time, tzitzit? No, it's just a keychain. And there's just something really, like all the time, just ask her. I get really excited, and so here it's like just seeing everybody's hanging, it's really such a blessing. So I'm into that.
Before you go to the next point, that's also the way we identify each other. How many times you've been out in public and somebody you didn't know but knew what they were came up to you excited saying, are you Messianic? Are you? Because they see the tzitzit. It's like a calling card that identifies you. Which, by the way, since it does identify you, be careful what you're doing in public wearing your tzitzit. Okay, David.
Yeah, something that hit me today that I had never read before was in chapter 27, verse 8. Just the last two words of that verse, which is plainly and well. And it's something that I know you speak to, that the audience is slaves and later fishermen. These are not necessarily scholars who are being called, but it's slaves and fishermen. And so related to this idea of Gnosticism that you talk about, that we need to know everything, we need to know the details, but that the instruction here was simply plainly and well, kind of in, quote, layman's terms. And that's something that, in the covenant series that we're going through right now, that we weren't given all the details in order to then pick and choose which ones we want, which to some degree, if you kind of interact with the academic community, that's kind of what they do, and that's that philosophical mindset. Whereas in the slave and fisherman mindset, it is the obedience first and then the following, and not needing to, parse out every little detail. The quote that you have of the Creator left out a lot that you might want to know, but not anything that you need to know, I feel like really applies. And then lastly with that, just talking about the vertical alignment is something, the reason that I quote Rabbi all the time is because of that vertical alignment. Because when I'm up there on the microphone and there's a couple hundred people here, I don't want to say anything to speak into your lives that's not going to keep me safe and keep you safe. And so since really submitting under the discipleship process, I have never felt safer being ignorant of so many things, because I know that if I follow the protocol accordingly, I'm not responsible for those things. And that's why you'll hear me quote, it's like, okay, you sound like a broken record. Well, because I'm just sounding what he is, which is he's just reading out of the book. So that's something that in that vertical alignment related to the previous verse, just trying to keep everybody safe.
And when that doesn't work, 423-825.
4975.
Look, sometimes, being Jewish myself, look, we all pick on where we came from, and we can all do those kind of things. But also, out of respect, we also can glean a lot of stuff, and we should be respectful. If you watch the discipleship language that you find in the Jewish community, and if you ever did, please don't go there, because some of you will go there and then decide you want to become Jewish. Okay, so don't do that. But, if you ever listen to some of the rabbis out there that are fairly large teachers and they have ministries wherever they have, I'm not talking about the anti-missionaries, just the ones that are teaching their groups Torah the way they do. You will hear them quote their rabbis. In other words, they're going down their discipleship chain. And so even though they may be fairly well established and famous in themselves, they will refer back to that alignment. Okay? Because some of you would know that if you're listening to a Chabad person, they're going to be referring back to the Rebbe, they're going to refer back to Schneerson. If you're listening to the Breslov guys, they're going back to excuse me. If you're listening to one rabbi, like, for example, like Eliezer Brody, will refer back to Shalom Arush. Shalom Arush will refer back up the line. It shows discipleship, okay? And so that's where the disciples referred back to Yeshua. Yeshua always referred back to his Father. But there should be not the telephone game going on where somehow the message gets all convoluted. But some of that has happened over the centuries as it got passed down and passed down and passed down. Nachman is the one I was thinking of, okay, on the Breslov side. And so, but again, it's not because the man is the end point. They know that man heard from and learned from going back up the chain. What did Paul tell you he was? He didn't just say he was, a Hebrew or this, and I said that he was a student of. He goes, I was a student of Gamaliel. So that's my teacher, he said. So of course you had to know who Gamaliel was and what it meant. Okay? What it meant to a lot of people, if you understood back there, it meant he could actually quote you all of this from memory. That's pretty impressive stuff. Okay, some of you don't even know how to find the verses. He actually knew every verse, which is why there's so much in Paul's writings that all of the New Testament Christians miss, because they have no idea that it's referring back to stuff that they just never read. All that stuff to the left of Matthew. So I appreciate David a lot, saying I'm as a student, as a disciple, if someone asks a question, I should know how my rabbi answers it, knowing how he understood what he's learned down the vertical chain. Okay? Then at some point, when you are sent out as a shaliach, as something as an apostle, or sent out one, like you saw Yeshua do, when someone puts you in a place of teaching, now you can incorporate things that are in line with your teacher, but with your own way of saying it or your own perspective. Not that you're changing anything. Okay, like last night when I came on the stage, Curtis and I were saying exactly the same thing, but I was able to say it in a different way than he did. So some of you understood it better when he said it. Some of you understood it better when I said it. But it was the same thing. But we have different ways of communicating the same information so that more people can understand it. I would love to see David do all the same teachings I did, or any one of the students that I have do the same teachings. You'll get the same information, but he'll say it slightly differently, so it might make more sense to you than when I said it. And vice versa. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, who's next? Okay, Candace?
I just have some comments about Deuteronomy 22:5.
Okay.
When she said that was what's in my mind. I came from a religion, the United Pentecostal Church, and that's exactly what they taught. And they would go back into where the priests wore the linen bridges, and so that they assumed that only men could wear bridges and women could not. And so the men always looked really nice, and if a woman knew how to style her hair, which I didn't, I honestly felt like a washwoman. I mean, I just felt frumpy and not very feminine because, I'm wearing a dress, but I have this hair that has lots of broken split ends and stuff like that. And so what I see as I'm learning the Torah and I'm learning about this kind of stuff is how much that the other religions twist and turn, and they'll just pull one or two scriptures and they'll say, no, we're not under the law. But they'll go into the law and they'll pull that scripture out and make that a commandment, and they'll twist and put their own spin on it, and they'll subject you to this, and they'll shun you if you don't follow it. And you're not allowed to question.
Right.
You're never allowed to question. You have to, I know that was one of the questions I had for Rabbi was, am I allowed, if I'm respectful, am I allowed to disagree? And you said yes. I wasn't allowed to do that. I could only ask questions, but never was I allowed to disagree. And so I just see where, I'm like a baby right now. I'm having to learn everything. And even though I got into this in the fall of 2008, I really haven't had any teachers to really teach me. I mean, they would go do a Torah reading, and I remember in particular one time he was talking about, he had a picture, it was like a cartoon picture of a priest with all his garments, the high priest, and he said, you need to be like that. And I looked at that and I said, am I supposed to dress like that? What did he mean by that?
Yeah.
And then Yah led me to some teachings by a lady named Yedida that explained it, and I understood it better. But a lot of times people are teaching and that they don't know what they're doing. And so I'm really grateful, Rabbi, that, even if I get upset at you, I have to say you're a good teacher, regardless. I was one time, remember, I was really upset at you.
You were really upset.
Yeah, and I would still say, I wouldn't say nothing. I would say I was upset, but I would say, but he teaches good. And, when I got really discouraged before I found you, I knew I couldn't go back to the church world. I didn't know where I was going to go, but I couldn't go back to the church world.
Amen.
So.
All right, thank you, Candace. Okay, so really quickly, first of all, Candace, I was very blessed to see that you were able to come up and read today. So that was very good. So I did get to see that. Okay, a couple of things real quickly. So let's kind of address them in no particular order. We'll take the last one first, which is, in case you're wondering, why was she so upset with you? Well, you know what? When you're dealing with counsel, okay, two things are happening. One is you may be being forced to face your stuff. That's never going to be fun. The other is the person that's working with you to face your stuff doesn't necessarily, at that moment, have the right disposition to help you do that. And that can be a compliment, because depending on, how it is, if someone gets you at that wrong moment. And so sometimes when you counsel with somebody, you have no idea what they've already done. Maybe they've already dealt with 5 other really challenging counselings or this or that, and they just reached some sort of a limit. I'm not saying that's what it was. I don't remember it. I just know we did have those moments. But here's the thing is that you should have that understanding that she said. She said, I know he's that anointed, appointed I need to listen to, even though I don't like him right now. And don't let that be a reason to leave. Because I can promise you that, any leader is going to have those moments. You as a parent have those moments with your children where you realize, you know what, I probably was harsher or stronger than I needed to be. And there's, so we have those moments. Now, that realization, by recognizing those things is really important so that you stay. Okay, so there are reasons to leave if you're in a group, and there are reasons that you shouldn't leave because, okay, it wasn't fun, I didn't like it, but so what? Now, the second thing is, let's understand that when it comes to disagreeing, Yes, I told her it was totally okay to disagree. But I also told her, if you remember, I said, but you have to also realize that as a new person, because remember, she said, I disagreed with you, and you said it was okay, but then she said, I'm a newborn. What that means is that you're probably not, and don't be offended, some of you get those feelings bags out. You have to recognize that you're just not qualified to know whether or not I'm right or wrong. I mean, don't be offended by that. If you are new, what makes you think you're qualified to tell me I'm wrong? I don't mean like, how dare you tell me? I mean, I'm being honest with you. If you know you're new, what makes you think you're qualified to tell the teacher he's wrong? Now, you can tell the teacher I don't agree with that in my level of knowledge right this moment. I don't know if you want to raise your hand, but how many of you listened to something I taught a while ago, or when you first were starting, when you first met me, disagreed, and then came later to realize, you know what, he was right? Anybody? Look at all those hands. That's not because I'm always right. I'm just saying is that you came to learn more and understand more, and you were not qualified to really understand at the beginning what you first heard. And some of you, the same thing with the great teachers of the Bible. How many of you have realized that Paul wasn't saying what you thought he said? Because you weren't qualified without the training and education to understand what Paul was talking about. Same thing with what we're reading here in Deuteronomy, what Moses is talking about. So let's be really careful, because I have people, and they love to say this because they take great pride in it. They say, Rabbi, I love you, the teachings are great. I mean, there's a few things I don't agree with. They always want to make sure they tell me that. And I'm like, why are you telling me that? You've been doing this for 2 years, and I've been doing this for 40 years. I mean, so where is that balance? Not that I can be wrong, and you could be right, but at least recognize that you may not be qualified yet to tell me I'm wrong. Does that make sense? Is that fair? There are peers that I interact with. I've told you that Rico Cortez and I have that kind of relationship. If I ever teach anything or he ever teaches anything that either one of us here that we think is like out there, we can call each other up and say, what in the world was that? But can we agree that I would be more qualified to talk to him than you would, or vice versa? Okay? So think of that respect relationship. It really is highly disrespectful to tell the teacher when you're so new, oh, and by the way, just so you know, I don't agree with everything. I don't expect you to agree with everything. But implied there is, I think I'm right and you're wrong, instead of I just don't quite understand your thing. So right now, as far as I understand it, I don't get it enough to agree with it. But try to get the pride and ego thing to the place where you don't think you're actually smart enough to know whether the teacher who's been doing this, if it's a teacher that's not been doing it for 5 minutes like you can disagree with all those 5-minute teachers all you want, you're all on the same page. Okay? You've been doing it 5 years, so have they. But is this making sense? Okay? And by the way, we do have a leadership council and other people that when anybody thinks that anything might be a little bit, I don't understand what you're saying, it seems to me I might disagree, we can talk about these things. And you can bring it up and say, right now I'm not seeing it the way you do and I'm not agreeing with you, and that's respectful. And that's why I said to Candace, you absolutely have every right and should have moments when you just don't get it or don't agree for whatever reason. That's fine. Please tell me, but be respectful. And that's the way she worded it. I said, as long as you're respectful, that's fine. Because recognize that if you're really hard about it and then 2 years later realize that you weren't right, that could be a little embarrassing. Is it making any sense? Okay? And so, I think I said this on, I don't know if we got it in focus of it or something like that, but I know one of the teachings during the Q&A where it was, I said, look, you have to recognize the limits of your qualifications as a Torah scholar or as a Bible scholar. Well, you don't understand. I'm 70 years old or 60 years old, and I've been reading the Bible since I was 2. Look, I had a gentleman come up to me after teaching in Knoxville one time, and his English wasn't real good, but, so it was hard to understand him, and he had no teeth. So it was kind of mush-mouthed. But he came and brought me his Bible, and he pointed to the back where he had all these little marks, and he said, I've read the Bible 47 times, whatever it was, all the way through, and blah, 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 therefore I'm right and you're wrong. And I said, not if you read it the same exact way 47 times. Then all you did was ingrain yourself more and just dig into that one thought process over and over and over and over. So I'm not impressed with how many times you read the Bible or how much older you might be than me, etc. It only probably made it harder for you to understand anything if you were doing it mostly when you were not in a Torah-observant community setting. Those of you that were raised with nothing and really never studied anything find this a whole lot easier because it's not swimming upstream against the other stuff, which goes to the other thing that Candace said is, they would take things that were in the Torah to make a point when it was convenient for them to make the point they wanted to make. If you remember, one of my rules of discussion when we did the Q&A the other night, which also fits into this, is let's first read the verse and agree what it says and doesn't say. So what did I do with the verse about that pertaining to a man or a woman? We read the verse and we said that it really doesn't say. It's limited to what it says. It says a man is not to wear that pertaining to a woman, and a woman is not to wear that pertaining to a man, more or less. Now, the man's one had the word garment in there. But that's all we had to work with. It didn't say what kind of garment. Maybe in those days there was a garment that went on top of the clothes that was very clearly for a woman that we don't know about. Okay, does that make any sense? I mean, it could have been a type of sash or whatever it is. And so be really careful. So then what happens is a group like the UPC, the United Pentecostal Church, they decided that women should be not wearing this and they should be wearing that or whatever, and they find the verses that back that up. All groups do that. So you got to be careful with it. We try very hard to avoid that, to have no agenda. I can't remember. I wish I could find it. It's hysterical. I found a guy who put together proof that his rooster was the Messiah. He picked verses, a little verse here, a half a verse there, that proved his rooster was the Messiah. And if you actually followed those verses, he was right. Out of context, partially understood, etc. He had the Messianic rooster. I think it was a rooster. It might have been a chicken, but I think it was a rooster. Because there aren't too many verses that mention chickens, but you have roosters in there. I'm just saying, okay? You could, with a book this big, make it say anything you want. And we've all seen that. So we have to be careful. But please be humble enough to recognize, actually somebody posted on their Facebook page the other day, and I thought it was great. They had a little circle of people sitting together, and it was called Messianics Anonymous, like what I've talked about, the joke. And the person put their name up there and said, "Hi, my name is so-and-so, and I don't know as much as I think I know." We should start off with that. Okay, we are, especially when we're not 8 or 10 or 20 or whatever, but now we get into our 40s and our 50s, and we think we're so smart, and our ability to understand and study, and so that it doesn't take much for us to think we're an expert. Just remember, an expert is a former drip under pressure. Process that for a while. Process that for a while. Okay? So let's be really reluctant to do those things. Where's the mic? Okay, Diana, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Diana Chavez, and I don't know as much as I say I know.
Well, I think you know. There you go.
Okay, back to the garments. Could it be as well that maybe a man should not take the role as a woman and the woman should not take the role as a man?
Yeah, again, I think it falls under the subheading gender confusion. Okay?
I have a second question. In Deuteronomy 24, I think, it says that a man that hates his woman could divorce her or do a certificate of divorce. Can you elaborate more on the hate?
Okay, well, when you're looking at it, actually, where's the verse? What is it? Okay, hold on. Okay, so you have two steps going on here. Remember, this is talking about a woman that's already been divorced. Because it starts off where a woman, is married, and a matter of uncoveredness has been found, something that's been, discovered there. We talked about this in the divorce teaching, right? The divorce, remarriage, and putting away. And then he gives her a divorce certificate, and then she goes and marries another man. And then if the latter husband shall hate her and write her, so there may be something continuing going on here, and and of course he knew what was going on because she had been a divorced woman, and so it's not, again, the limitations of it says, that. In this process, we know step one, she was married, and there was something that was discovered that was not good. So it's not just like she burnt his dinner, okay, which we'll see tonight in Fiddler on the Roof, okay? But a matter of uncoveredness, which it really doesn't tell us what that is either, Although in the teaching, we dug into the Hebrew and tried to kind of glean a little bit more about that. And then it's the latter husband shall hate her and write her a certificate of divorce. If that happens, then how this plays forth. And so that word hate, and I don't have the Hebrew in front of me, we'd have to go and dig deeper into the possible meanings of hate in the context of a marriage of a woman that's already had problems. Okay? And so basically the point of all of this section is to say, look, if you divorced her because you thought she was problematic and had an uncoverness thing, and then somebody else married her and had some problem with her, you cannot take her back because why did you divorce her unless there really was a problem? That's really the thing. It's not because she's now so tainted you can't take her back. It's like, well, if you were going to take her back anyway, why would you divorce her in the first place? Do you follow that logic? And so that's why it says no. He says, you are not allowed to do this after she has been defiled. In other words, she's been another man's. That would be an abomination. It's like, well, look, it's an abomination not just because she'd already been another man's, but because it would be an abomination for you to have divorced her for no reason. Or divorced her only because you just got upset for 5 minutes and now you want her back. Work it out first. Figure it out first. And if you are going to get divorced, marriage is supposed to be for, guess what? Divorce is supposed to be same thing, forever. You should not be making that point unless you absolutely are done. Make sense? Okay? Now, this idea of hate, I'm sure hate is the wrong word. And the same thing like when it talks about, if you don't hate mother, brother, sister, etc. Yeshua says this stuff. It's not hate. It's love less by comparison in that case. But that's comparing a Greek word here, and then we're dealing with the Hebrew word here in the Deuteronomy. So, Yeah, but I have to look at the possible definitions there. Okay, sorry, David was giving me the actual word, but it's in this section, it's not about that piece of it. It's about the divorce, the first one, the divorce was because it was a real issue. The assumption then should be that the second one also had a real issue. Because divorces should be only if there's a real issue. Not the putting away, which requires the porneo. Remember we talked about that in Matthew and other places. But this is saying divorce, not putting away. And so there are lots of reasons for divorce, but it's saying let's understand this whole thing here is to say you can't just divorce her in a heat of the moment, somebody else marries her, and then they get rid of her, and now you want her back. Why didn't you just fix it in the first place? See, Yahweh doesn't hate divorce as it says in a lot of the English translations because it doesn't actually say that in the Greek or the Hebrew. He doesn't love it either, I'm sure, because he didn't want you to make a contract or covenant intending to break it or at any point going forward breaking it. He expects your word to be your word, right? Let your yea be yea and your nay be nay. And so this is kind of what you see going on here in chapter 24. You're in covenant with her. If there's a real reason and you're going to get divorced, you need to know that's over forever. So don't do that unless you're ready for that. Understand the full ramifications. So does that make it a little clearer? Okay, where's the mic? Okay, Robert, go ahead.
Yeah, Rabbi, my question's in Deuteronomy 28:28. Yahweh shall strike you with madness and blindness and bewilderment of heart. What is bewilderment of heart?
Okay. I was going to make a joke, but I don't know if it'd be, What you just did was bewilderment of heart. I'm just saying, not understanding. You're bewildered. You're confused. You don't know what to do. Especially when it's a heart issue. Not in this case. That's why I was hesitant to say it as a joke, because your heart is going to be mixed in its desire to go in one direction or the other. So you're confused, unfulfilled. You're seeking and you're not finding. And that's why the next verse is one I quote all the time, verse 29, which is, you're kind of groping around at noon like a blind man gropes in the darkness. Even though it's noon. Noon is like supposed to be the highest, brightest, sunniest part of the day where you can see everything. The bewilderment of heart is you feel unsatisfied and unfulfilled and you're seeking, you're wanting and you're longing and you can't find it. that kind of fits together with the groping around in the darkness. So I'm going to smite you with madness and blindness and bewilderment of heart. And by the way, you can put all three of those in your heart. Our hearts get all screwed up. Madness has entered our heart. We're not thinking right. Madness meaning crazy. We're just not thinking clearly and right. We're going off in all kinds of crazy directions. Do we not see that in the body with all of the fringe stuff that people want to just focus on as being the thing and the end-all, be-all, blah? To me, it's not that those things in themselves are madness. It's the way they're being handled that's madness. Why did this little thing that you're all excited about become the most important thing in your Bible? I don't know how that is. We need to keep feast days, so figuring out the calendar, probably pretty important. But it's madness to make it the end-all, be-all, most important thing in the book. Okay? Those in the charismatic movement who've turned this whole speaking in tongue things into the end-all, be-all thing in your book. That's madness. In other words, it's not sound thinking. It's not a sound mind. It takes something just because you get excited about it and turn it into the thing of all things. It could be the nature of the Godhead. It could be, crescent or conjunction or whatever. It could be anything that you elevate into this thing. And then he talks about blindness. You know what that means? That you probably don't see it right anyway. And the bewilderment of heart. Because then as he starts to show you that there's a lot of people out there that see the same thing as important and they don't agree with you and there's all this stuff going on, that you can get really frustrated in your heart and confused, and you just don't understand why are things so unclear. Anybody feel that? I mean, you'd like to think, like the verse that David quoted where it says, write this down plainly, straightforward, simple, that it would actually be read and be understood as plain and straight and simple. And then you read your book and you go, I just read my book. I have no idea what I just read. That's actually part of the punishment we're in. You're not supposed to be able to figure this out by yourself. By the way, that's another thing I've said before, and again, people get offended and insulted and think I'm a crazy egomaniac. I don't claim I know everything, but just understand that you need to understand that you don't know everything. And that you have to understand that with all of this going on in the punishment, you're not supposed to be able to figure it all out by yourself. And that's why there's supposed to be teachers. That's not because you're not smart enough or capable enough. It's part of the cursing. And to get you cleaned up, he doesn't want every man doing what's right in their own eyes. In other words, you, with your own understanding and interpretation and your self-teaching, are going to think differently than the person sitting next to you with their own understanding and their self-teaching. And everybody's doing what? Look, is the Ruach confused? Is Yahweh divided? So then why do we, who claim we're learning from the Ruach, have 57 different ways of looking at everything? I mean, because that's the punishment we're in. That's why he puts the fivefold. That's why he puts the anointed appointed. To help clear through some of that foggy, bewildered, confused, blind mess. But see, our pride and ego doesn't like that because we've been lied to and deceived and, It's almost like the song by The Who, which is more political, but you could do it religious-wise. Here's the new boss, the same as the old boss. Well, here's the new teacher, same as the old teacher. I've been down that second, third, and fifth path thinking I found the right path. How many went down more than one path and only found it to be a dead end? Would that make you a little skeptical? Oh, yeah. And so that's why you don't want a teacher. Not that you never did. Maybe you always had, up to a point had wanted teachers, and then after being disillusioned 4 or 5 dozen times, you said, okay, I'm done with that. But when you walk down the path in your own way, one of two things can only happen if you walk down the path being self-taught, thinking the Ruach is doing it just directly to you, direct download, all that stuff. Only one of two things is going to happen, or maybe both. One is you're going to get very frustrated at some point. I was listening to a YouTube broadcast that someone told me was not being overly flattering towards me, and it wasn't. Although I wasn't named directly, but it was pretty obvious to those who know them and know me that I was the one they were talking about. But the main point of it was, we don't need teachers like this guy out there is talking about. And the Ruach teaches us directly. And this thing went on for about 2 hours. And as you forwarded through the whole thing, about an hour into it, guess what the people on the panel started doing? Answering people's questions. Okay. Why didn't you just tell them go home and let the Ruach teach you? I'm serious. If the Ruach is who teaches us, that the Spirit is what teaches us, why would anybody answer anybody's question? And if you're the one getting all of those direct downloads and the Ruach teaching, why do you have so many questions? Could it be because it's just not true? And it really doesn't work that way? I mean, we're just blind, bewildered, mad. That's madness. It is a madness to think, well, I'm taught by the Ruach and we don't need teachers. By the way, can you explain to me in Deuteronomy where it says this? Well, why do you need me to answer that question? Why would you be asking? And you don't just ask me, you'll ask 57 people. You'll ask anybody you can get a hold of. Because you want to know. Well, why didn't the Ruach tell you if the Ruach is teaching you everything? Because that's never what it was about. The Ruach never was going to be that teacher. It will confirm things for you. It will help to give you an understanding as the true teacher that you're listening to something that's true, etc. But it's not going to just generally, not that it never happens, but just generally it's not going to be there answering every one of your questions. And that's why you come to these things and ask the questions afterwards. I read this verse and I don't understand it. Or I understand it, but I'm not sure I've got it right. There's something in my system, in my feeling, my spirit, my own spirit, that says, I'm not sure I've got this right. So we end up with all this hypocrisy. No, I don't need a teacher. The Ruach teaches me. Then why don't you understand everything? Do you understand that the apostles had the Ruach? Yes? Okay. And they were taught absolutely one-on-one discipleship by the Messiah himself. What was the last thing Messiah did before he left? He opened their minds to understand. So they still didn't have it all. He opened their minds and showed them the scriptures about him, even though he'd already been teaching them for a couple of years, even though he did it directly from the teacher, the best teacher, the greatest teacher that there is. And they had the Ruach. Okay, some people say, no, they didn't, because it wasn't Acts chapter 2 yet. Okay, stop. Go listen to the Ruach teaching. Knock that off. Okay? There were those with the Ruach all the way to the beginning. Everything else is just, again, bewilderment, madness, and, blindness. It's just foolishness. But see, you came out of a church that taught you that. We're special because we have the Spirit and they didn't. Really? You think you're more special and that somehow they're not getting... Look, do you not have Hebrews 11 in your Bible? So do we think Abraham doesn't get in? Adam doesn't get in? Isaac, Jacob doesn't get in? Jeremiah, Isaiah doesn't get in? Blah, blah. Daniel doesn't get... What, are you crazy? Yes, we are crazy. So he says, here, we have madness, blindness, and bewilderment of heart. Okay? So yes, we are, absolutely, we come by it honestly, we are crazy. Now, let's be really careful so we can understand this. Let me just find the verse I'm looking for so I can give you something to add on to that. 1 second. I'm not finding it. I thought it was in Ephesians, but it's not. Where's that verse where it talks about walking with the delusion of your mind, etc.? Okay, the point is, there is a New Testament verse that says exactly that same thing. Okay? In Ephesians 2, it talks about how we were dead in trespasses and sin, and we walked according to the course of the world, according to the rule, etc., sons of disobedience. Oh, yes, it is. Actually, here it is. No, it isn't. Okay, never mind. Because it does talk about doing the desires of the flesh and the mind, etc. But, there are verses that talk about how not only were we inheriting lies and having strong delusion, but there's also ones that talk about how we were walking in the delusion of our... You found it? That might be it. Let me just see. No, that was not it, but yes, it's the same idea. It's part of what I quoted. And for this reason, Elohim sends them a working delusion for them to believe the falsehood. That's part of the punishment. But there are ones where we walked in the madness, the delusion of our own minds. We thought we were so smart. We thought we were, there's a different verse that I'm looking for that says that. But just understand, you know the verse. You've heard these things before. And it matches up perfectly with Deuteronomy 28, the fact that we have blindness and madness and bewilderment of heart. And so it's madness when we have in our ego and pride that we think we're smarter than the teachers. That is madness, okay? Now, of course, if you're the teacher, if you think you know everything, that's madness. There needs to be the humility. So let's not think that, oh, okay, so he thinks. No, we all are subject to the verse that says that you are going to be blind, bewildered, and have madness. Now, hopefully the Ruach and the Father and the Son decide to open up that teacher's understanding well enough to not confuse you more. But first, he has to do to the teacher what he has to do to you. He's got to get all of the other stuff out, the Christianese, the biases, the filters, the Talmudic Jewish stuff, whatever it is, all of that pre-biased stuff. I think what makes me reasonably more effective than some, I'm not saying I'm the greatest or anything, is because I really was never raised in Talmudic Judaism, so I never really learned that stuff and embraced it, etc. And I really was never raised in Christianity with all of that stuff. So I didn't really spend a whole lot of time on either riverbank getting indoctrinated and filtered. And so it makes it a whole lot easier. And so when I listen to some of the Jewish Messianic teachers, I hear them struggling with all the Talmudic stuff. Not that all of it's bad. Same thing with Christianity. They didn't teach you everything wrong. But it can get you confused to know which stuff was which. And that's where I praise Yah, I didn't really ever have that. Okay? My only experience in Christianity was in a Torah observant church, and my only experience in Judaism was cultural. I didn't really learn halakha from them. So I didn't have anything to overcome, let go of, and be confused by. So that helps give me some clarity that others may not have. Does it make sense? Okay? And so thank you for asking that, Robert. Did that answer your question? Okay. And so be careful that the words that you're reading, try to find other ways to see it. What would madness look like? Well, what would delusional look like? So madness, delusional, blindness, frustration, bewilderment. Find other, words that are like that. It's almost like go out and get the thesaurus and kind of look at what other, so you can kind of get a better understanding of what's really being said here. And you can say, oh, I can relate to one of those, to what he's trying to say here. Because how many times have you been looking at Scripture and dealing with a teaching or an idea and you go, I just can't see it? What's the blindness? Okay, I know the teacher said this and I'm looking at it and I can't see that. Now, it could be you're listening to a teacher that's wrong and doesn't know what they're doing, but I'm saying, but that's the idea that you can't see. It's blindness, the frustration and bewilderment. By the way, bewilderment of heart being, why should this be so hard? That's why should this be so hard? Why should I be groping around at noon like I'm blind? I'm bewildered by that. Well, then you realize because that's part of the punishment we're all living in. Do we all not understand that we're still in the punishment? Okay? Which means we're also not going to receive all the blessings. So some people come out of those name it, claim it, blab it, grab it, whatever they say. Okay? And if you are, then apparently, according to them, you have free license to grab any verse you want that sounds good to you and stand on it, and it has to be true, and you have to get it. Anybody have those deals? I mean, you can't do that. Deuteronomy 28 is for who? The blessings and the cursings, by the way. All those that would be covenanted. Now, the blessings come, and many of the cursings come when you're covenanted as a nation. But part of the cursings is that you'll be scattered and suffer some of these things when you're no longer a nation. But the blessings in general are for corporate Israel. So you can't say, well, it says if I keep Torah here that I'll be fertile, and right now I'm barren and I haven't had any children. That promise was to corporate Israel. That doesn't mean that to help you get stronger in your faith, a miracle might not happen, and you can pray for that and have that happen. But you can't stand on it like he promised it. He never promised you will not be dealing with fertility issues. He promised corporate Israel, walking in covenant and staying in covenant, that there would be no fertility issues. And that's the difference when you look at these things. You can't say, oh, but in Scripture it says this. Yes, but who did it say it to? Don't, just because Sarah was told she'll have a baby doesn't mean that you would, okay, I'm barren, I believe, so I'm going to have a baby. Well, maybe, maybe not. But it's not a promise to you. Just like we talk about context, about, well, who's talking, who's the audience, what's the situation. You know what? Any kind of promise out there, make sure you're clear on who was promised. There are some promises, absolutely, that are for all of us. Absolutely, there are promises to all of us. Some of them are not very, very specific. Or they have parameters attached to it. You have to be in this particular category to claim that promise. In this case, most of 28, the promises are to corporate Israel as a nation together. Clear? Okay, who's next? Okay, in the back, Dawn.
Is it on? Okay. I have two statements and a clarification question, I guess. The first statement was...
Okay, you're within the limit.
Okay, good. Yesterday, you were just talking about how the men would somebody had talked about the rape, and the men were to marry the women. When we were in Israel, we got the opportunity to ask some of the elders to clarify that, because I had a friend actually walk away from the faith, or walk away from being Messianic because of that rape thing. Because how could a loving God possibly make a woman, have to marry the man that raped her? But understanding from the Jewish perspective kind of changed the whole dynamic for me anyway, because I was kind of, oh yeah, that makes sense, okay. And started getting a little upset, but when we went there, it was made very clear that I was coming from an English mindset, and they had a very different experience where the men would go out into battle, and they were just raping women and leaving them. And so the command came down that, no, you can't you have to not only marry them, but provide for them forever in a good way. So think very strongly, consider whether you want to actually do that before you go out and just take a woman. So it was there to protect the women, not to hurt them. That was my first statement. My second statement has to do with the toiletry thing that we were talking about, and how Yahweh doesn't want to walk through the camp and see any of that mess. And we're learning in this environment how to kind of live corporately and, for the weeks. And so is it inappropriate? I think I asked the same question on the halakha, but just clarifying for everybody else that may be wondering and have an inquiring mind like mine. Is it inappropriate then, therefore, to pray on the potty while you're downloading? I don't know. So is it therefore then inappropriate to have I had a sister-in-law who had scripture plastered all over the bathroom.
Anybody really want this job?
It stinks, I know.
Okay, go ahead.
So is that not necessarily a good place to read your Bible if you're there for 30 minutes?
That would explain why you're praying. Because if you're there for 30 minutes, you need prayer. Something is going on. There's got to be, now if you don't have an issue, which is why you have to be there for 30 minutes, there's definitely got to be a more comfortable chair in your house. Because if I ever sat for more than just a little while, my legs go numb. I mean, I don't know how anybody would want to sit there for that long unless you had no choice. That might need prayer. Okay. Deuteronomy 17, decision in MTY is that you are not to Marco Polo when you're sitting there. And yes, ladies, we did have that problem. Men. And they didn't think we knew that we could tell the background was the bathroom. Well, I'm sitting here, might as well make a Marco Polo. And it wasn't to show off that they were there. They just were talking, whatever, but we could tell that looks like you're in the bathroom. So that was a decision we had to make. All right, so real clear, first of all, look. You need to pray. You ready? This is going to be profound. When you need to pray. Now, there's also time to pray when you don't need to, but you know that you're supposed to get in there and have time with Yahweh. That's not the place to do that. But there could be a moment where, look, if you're not feeling well, you may end up in the bathroom, right? I mean, if you're really sick, praying at that moment would probably be a real good idea. Okay, if you're hovering over the bowl instead of sitting on it and you're feeling really like everything in you is about to come out from your toes, I mean, that's a moment that you're like, please, fix this, make this stop. All right, so that, and if you're sitting there for 30 minutes, you may have another problem. Also, I'm not joking, that may need some prayer. So yes, but you're not going to pray unless it's urgent and needed in that situation. No, I don't think that would be an appropriate place to have a conversation with the King of the universe. Okay? So let's go with the idea of need. When you need prayer, you could be anywhere, under any circumstance, and so you need to pray, you need to pray. Okay? Now, as far as reading material, look, I've never brought reading material into the restroom because I've never needed to be there that long. No, I'm not saying that to pick on anybody. If you're there that long, you need to figure out that your body's having a problem, figure out how to fix it, because it's not the way we're designed to be. You shouldn't be in there that long. And you can't possibly be doing it because it's comfortable to sit there. I mean, those seats are not designed for comfort. And I'm not being a wise guy, I'm just being honest. So a lot of us in the Messianic tend to be more health-focused than maybe some people do. I've just noticed, that's not that they're unhealthy, but we're more looking at and studying and figuring out how to be healthy. Well, you know what? Your body's movements are an indicator of your health. I mean, if you're not having at least one, really you should be having one for every meal. What goes in is supposed to come out. Okay, so you should be paying attention to that. And if that whole process is jammed up to the point where you're sitting for half an hour, you need to go get that figured out. And not figuring out it's a great time to read. Okay? Because I love walking in people's bathrooms. They got magazines and books. I'm like, what in the world? Don't you have a reading room somewhere else? And I have to admit, I've picked one up just to see maybe, but I'm never there long enough to read anything. Because I'm not going to sit there more than I have to. So I'm thinking, what's the point? Okay, did I answer the question? Okay, what else did you have?
Yes, the last is more of a kind of statement as far as the seats in women.
Okay.
It's kind of been an encouragement from you, but I know within our home, Nate has kind of set the standard for our home that the women and the ladies should wear seats for us because we need as much reminder as possible. And for him, coming from a man's perspective, he's very encouraged when he looks at a woman and he sees the seat because it reminds him that he needs to keep his mind clear and clean and not be lusting after his sisters. Not that he has a problem with that, but he likes the girls to have that reminder as well. And you've always taught us to be a maximalist in this area. So this is something that I just wanted to encourage those women that if they do have a conviction to do that, and it's okay with the heads over them, that Rabbi is very much in support of that as well.
Yes, and so just to be clear, because sometimes I make a point. Yes, that's very good. Sometimes when I make a point, I may be incomplete because I get so focused on that piece of the point. I did make it pretty clear that the men had to wear it. The other part of that I didn't finish was that I will not stop the women from wearing them. Even though I don't think the verse is clear that they have to, I certainly won't stop them or, discourage them from doing so. Okay? I mean, I do agree with why wouldn't you want them to do it? Now remember, in Torah, can we understand that there are positive commands? Those are the do's. There are also negative commands. Those are the don'ts. So just because there's a positive command for the men without a negative command for the women doesn't mean the women can't do it. Because the can'ts and shouldn'ts come in the negative commands. And so that's where my balance comes from. And I'm kind of a literal interpreter, where I don't want to say, all women have to do something that I can't actually be sure. But I won't stop you if I don't see anything that says you shouldn't do it. And so the ladies who've talked to me about it say, absolutely, go ahead if that's what you feel that you need to do. I've had some ladies who used to wear them stop wearing them because it helped them to understand headship, because when they realized that their covering was wearing it, they were looking to them, and it helped their mindset. So by the one way, you could take it the way Dawn and Nate have taken it, and that's great. You could also take it the other way. Not saying one way's better or the other, but a lady may say, I have a problem with headship. When I'm wearing it, I'm thinking I don't need anybody. So maybe I shouldn't be wearing it and look to my head and my covering, because it reminds me that Torah flows through that line. So you can see you can make a case either way. And so some of those ladies have felt a tremendous blessing taking them off and looking to their covering. Not just taking them off, but once they came under a covering and they realized they had a covering, whether it be their husband or the leadership, because some of them are widowed, etc., or they're divorced and they don't have a covering, help their mindset. And that's why I would not discourage them from wearing them. I wouldn't also discourage them from not wearing them, because there can be a benefit either way. Does that make sense now? See how there can be a case that could take you in like, oh no, now I've got bewilderment of heart. I don't know what to do. No, think about what's going to benefit you and your family the most. Men, you have no choice. Okay? And stop fighting it. Stop arguing about it. And I'm not going to go to all of you that I know I've already put in the water, but if you've been in the water and made the 8 declarations, you are in trouble. You have declared that you will take on all the responsibilities of being a citizen in the kingdom of Elohim. That was, declaration 4 or 5 or whatever it was. You made that declaration. You are responsible for Numbers 15. But. The ladies want to wear them. The ladies are used to having things on their clothing and accessories and all this stuff. Not that they think of it that way, but that's not a thing for them. They don't mind that. Men are thinking, but I'm going to wear that with my suit or whatever I wear, and the guys are going to mock me, laugh at me. So what? I mean, where does that matter? Don't you want to be set apart and stand out as being different? No, I don't. I'm white. I want to be ignored, and that's from the color code, not skin color. Okay? Because somebody on there's going, what is he talking about, white people? No. But the white, red, blue, and yellow, I mean, there are people with personalities that are like, no, I do not want anybody noticing me. Well, but that's being a set-apart, peculiar nation. By the way, do you remember the verse that says we're to be a peculiar nation? Did not you know? And that's what you're afraid of, though. You're afraid your friends and family members and your coworkers are going to say, what are you wearing? That's peculiar. Okay, Yeshua wore them. What do you think the woman was reaching for with the issue of blood? Tzitzit. I wasn't reaching for the hem of his garment. What was attached to it? Okay? I mean, we almost picture her lying on the floor, being trampled on, reaching for his. Look, that would have been rude and inappropriate to be looking up the robes and everything else. Because these guys are all wearing robes. I'm not being a joke here. That's just serious. This woman wasn't on the floor. She was reaching through the crowd to get to his tzitzit, which had been on the hem of his garment. And it wouldn't have been on the fringe of the garment that was all the way down by his knees. They wore an outer garment, like a talit, that they would have, like you have with Elijah to Elisha. He threw his mantle. There's no Hebrew word mantle. He threw his talit. He said, when you have my talit, that will show you that you are the one. And so that would put the tzitzit where? By your hips. Do you know when I think Candace was mentioning about someone showing the picture of the priest. Well, the priest is wearing Ephesians 6, the armor of Elohim. It's not a Roman guard. I mean, how many of you saw a picture of Ephesians 6 and it looks like some military guy in armor and girding himself in the breastplate? Because they don't know what a priest looked like. The high priest had a breastplate and all these things. And what does it say to do with girding yourself? What are you girding yourself with? The truth. So where do you gird yourself? Around your ankles? Around your shoulders? Around your waist? So do you think Yahweh knew we'd be having these things right here? I remember I was at Sukkot 2009. 10, right before we even relaunched into Beth Shalom, and I was a guest speaker at a Sukkot, okay? And at that Sukkot, I was teaching something about the armor. And that's when I literally jumped out of my chair and I said, because it never hit me before, it's talking about the tzitzit as we wear them today around our waists. Gird your loins with the truth. That's how the Ruach can work. And I taught that many times, and it never really hit me that way. Because I was focused on what truth was and making sure you're girded with it, etc., as opposed to the idea that this represents the Torah, which is the truth. And yeah, of course Yahweh knew we'd be wearing them like this and having talit katans or putting them around our belts and stuff so they would be around our waist. Gird your waist with the truth. I thought it was beautiful and awesome. I literally jumped out of my chair to share that with you. I just stood up and I said, an epiphany. This light bulb just went on. Okay? So men, and I'm not going to go check my baptismal records. We don't have them. You got to be wearing these things. You have to be. It's part of your obligation in Torah. And if you're going to take on all the responsibilities of being a citizen, that's one of your responsibilities. There's no confusion there. Okay, who's next? Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Dennis?
This is a perfect question that Don actually answered, because I, too, have been wondering this for a long time, and it's a piggyback on top of that. I was going to ask you this anyway. First, I need to tell you what I've been doing, and then I need you to tell me what I probably should be doing regarding the tzitzits. And maybe this can help someone else who goes to the gym a lot. I don't wear loose stuff at the gym. What I've been doing since I came in a little over 2 years ago is I've been bringing them with me because I have multiple sets. If it's wrong, then you tell me, but I've been putting them in my gym bag because I know they're with me, and I put them in the locker. Then I hit the floor, I do my thing, and there's no place really for me to put them, but I will. Should I be wearing them while I'm lifting in the gym? I don't want to rip them, I don't want to damage them, but I will if I should be, as a witness.
Look, there are places where it's just obviously you're wearing a specific outfit that is going to either mess with the tzitzit or whatever. But you know what? The Orthodox put the tzitzit on the children, and they wear them with their clothing, and they're getting them in the mud, and they're running all over them playing, and they're just wearing them all the time, everywhere. But when you're in the gym, there is equipment. There are things that can be problematic. Safety is an important thing. So when I go to the gym, I don't always have the tzitzit on. It depends. I mean, there's been a couple of times where I was inspired to just run to the gym. I had a pair of shorts on, not my regular workout outfit, so I had the tzitzit on. It wasn't going to interfere with what I was lifting, and I kept them on. The main thing that you want to do is you should be going to the locker room and changing. You should be wearing them on when you walk in the door, wearing them on when you leave. Don't just carry them in your bag. You should be wearing them when you're not doing something where it would be a little bit challenging to wear them. Not challenging because what people will think, but challenging functionally. I mean, that's why you don't put them on your swimsuit. That's, how's that going to work? But you should be wearing them through most of your everyday function. Okay, when I get up in the morning, I do two things. Well, my normal routine, but I do two things in getting dressed. I put on my tzitzit, and I put my coin in my pocket. Because I'm not going to get caught. No. Okay, but you understand, it's just got to be part of what you do. I don't even think about it. I mean, I just almost mindlessly as you're getting dressed, you have to really think about how to put on your socks. No, so it's just part of what you do. The tzitzit just go on. And it's comforting to know they're there. So I would wear them as much as I could. If there were situations, like I said, where it would be problematic, but it would be okay to tuck them in, I'd tuck them in. Okay, but if you're going to be like doing, ladies or even the guys, you're going to be doing like something aerobic, like you're taking a cycling class or some other class, and they're just going to be getting all sweated up and everything else, and you're not possibly going to be able to be thinking about it anyway, well, yeah, okay, wear the outfit that's appropriate for what you're doing, and then put them back on when you're done. Once you've showered, you're leaving the locker room or just got dressed or whatever, whatever you're doing, you leave, put them back on. Okay, follow-up question? I'll repeat what you said, but go ahead. Okay. Okay. So, no. His point is he already puts on his outfit for the gym before he gets there, and he leaves that way. That's fine. But as soon as you change out of that outfit, get back the seat on. I do appreciate, though, and he's trying to be a maximalist, so he puts it at least in his bag. He's aware that he has them. Okay, so I mean that's perfectly okay. I mean, I know, I understand sometimes that it's really, especially with the way your routine and timing is, that you may want to go ahead and get dressed in your workout outfit before you go. Hey, okay, I get that. And so that's perfectly okay. But you're trying to maximize it. The thing is, a lot of people are trying to figure out, how to minimalize it. Because a lot of people ask me, well, I've even found out that the people that only wear it to services. And then the rest of the week, they're not wearing it. No, this is happening. I've known people to wear only one. I never figured out why that was, but okay. But I got that straightened out pretty good. But you should be wearing 4. All right? And so let's understand how this all works. And so we can get that worked out. Okay, but it's a good question. Look, you know what? There's a teaching called Let Me Not Be Ashamed. You might want to listen to that. The reason you don't wear it, men, is because you're embarrassed. I don't know if it's a shame thing, but you're afraid to be embarrassed. For guys, that's a big thing. Respect and being embarrassed and that kind of stuff is a big deal. And so you put things, the first time that you think about it, it's like, you want me to do what? Put things on my clothes hanging off, and people are going to look at me. And by the way, guys, it's a really important lesson you're going to learn once you start. You're going to know what it's like to be a woman and having somebody not look you in the eyes. Because guys do that. People will come up to me and they're talking to me, and I know they're looking at the seat trying to figure it out. But they're not going to say anything. Sometimes I've had to say, now, very rarely does anybody actually ever ask me about them. But when we're having a conversation and I see somebody's absolutely distracted by them, I look them in the eye and say, it's okay, you can ask. And they're like, what? I said, you want to ask. Go ahead. I might just tell them what it is. Because I can tell that, ladies, the guys don't know this, but you know when they're not looking at your eyes, right? Every time, don't you? Guys, they know. But when you're wearing seat, you'll know what that feels like. Because you'll see people looking, but trying not to get caught, But they want it because they see it and they don't know what it is. And so that's a lesson, that's a good lesson for the guys as well, to know what that feels like. To have somebody distracted by something that you're wearing. Now, of course, ladies, try to give them nothing to look at. We had a girl I was working in an insurance company, and she would come in, she was really pretty, young girl, and she had a reasonably good body, and she would wear these very short leather skirts, and then get all angry that guys are looking at her legs. I was like, what do you expect them to look at? You have like a neon sign pointing at your butt and your legs. You dress that way, wanting people to look there, then now you're mad at it. Or the ladies that wear the very low-cut stuff and half of your boobs are hanging out, and then you're like, well, why are the guys looking at that? Well, what do you want them to look at? Cover it up. They won't look at it. I'm just, some of this stuff that's bewildering, and I'm bewildered by that. Because then you act like you're offended. Did you not expect that? That's, something you can choose to minimize by dressing appropriately to not cause that to happen. Don't be surprised because some of you look at the guy like, oh, what are you looking at? Well, why are you showing it off? What did you want me to look at when you showed it off? You can't help yourself. Even the ladies are noticing that you're showing it off. Don't you, ladies? Okay? Because it's out there for everybody that, so cover it up. Cover it up. That's just a simple. Now, I'm not saying make sure your clothing is this length and this thing. Just be aware. What you dress and how you dress is going to draw attention to whatever part of the body you choose. You want to choose it. You can do whatever you want. You can draw that attention. Anybody remember the good old shoulder pads days? Let's not bring that back, okay? But why did the women wear that? Why? Because it took away from the focus on the bigger hips. It balanced it out. No, that's true. Proportionally, the mind and the eyes go to any imbalances. Okay? And some of the ladies had narrower shoulders. Not saying they had huge hips, I'm saying, but there was a balance problem. So the shoulder pads brought that into more balance. Don't get insulted. You're not understanding what I'm saying. Okay? I was a personal trainer. And as a personal trainer, I had a lady come to me one time, and she was in pretty good shape, but she was frustrated with her hips. And she came up to me and said, what can I do about this? And I said, please don't be offended, but let me just, and I poked her hip, and I said, feel that? That's your bone. I can't do anything with that. You're not fat. You just happen to have a physical structure where your hips are wider than you'd like them to be. And it's not even that they're that big. It's just you have narrow shoulders. And so if you look in the mirror and you think you have big hips. But I'm just saying is, the point of that was with the shoulder pads that you can draw attention anywhere you want. Do you catch what I'm trying to say here? So the whole point of the shoulder pads was to shift the attention, to bring a different balance. If your legs weren't that great, you could always show a little cleavage. If your legs are great, you can cover this. That's what ladies did. That's what fashion was all about. Getting the guy's eyes to go wherever you wanted them to go. Ladies, you know you can do that. But sometimes you forget that you're doing that even if you're not paying attention to it. So look in the mirror before you walk out and go, okay, if I was looking at me, where would the eyes go? Is that a good question? Instead of giving a rule of you have to have it up this high and this low and this, how about just look in the mirror and figure out, if I was looking at the person in the mirror, where would my eyes naturally drift to? What am I emphasizing? And then decide, is that really what I want to emphasize and draw attention to? Because a lot of ladies, it's amazing how they get shocked that you keep getting distracted by whatever but you put that on. You should have known. Because we are only human and we can't help that. And it's not just the guys, the ladies too. We'll notice that stuff. Okay? Anyway. So where were we going here? Okay, Anders.
Okay, Rabbi, my question is Deuteronomy 24 and 16. Can you please explain again the connection between each is to die for his own sin, and it's in 1 John 2:2. It says that Yeshua died for our sins.
Okay. 1 second. I got to make sure I give you the right verse that I want to go to as well. Yes. Okay. And so, by the way, that was a Ruach moment. What it looks like a Ruach moment? He asked a question. The Ruach brought to remembrance a verse I needed to go to. That's what it does. Okay? Now, it can only do that because that verse is something I put in. Right? Okay? So he connected a dot. Okay, it says here in 16, fathers are not to be put to death for their children, and children are not to be put to death for their fathers. Each one dies for his own sin. Okay? But then we have Yeshua. And so how is that in line? But we also have Ezekiel 18. Okay, Ezekiel 18 talks about if your father did great and you don't, you're going to pay for your own thing. And if your father was a sinner but you do right, you're going to be judged right. And so in other words, there's no, what the Christianity says that, well, you don't have to do anything because Yeshua did it all for you. They say Jesus did it all for you. That's what Christianity says. What did he do? He did a redemption. That's not the same thing as being punished for something somebody else did. Yeshua was being punished for what we did. He chose to redeem us, to take upon himself. This is saying here that you need to know you're responsible for yourself. Ezekiel 18 says exactly the same thing as Deuteronomy 24. Ezekiel 18 just doesn't do it in one verse. Go read Ezekiel 18, and it goes for about 20 verses where it goes through that whole thing. Over 20 verses. Okay, so you want to read that and understand it. But it's very clear there. Okay? It says, for example, in verse 20, the being whose sin shall die, but the son shall not bear the crookedness of the father, nor the father bear the crookedness of the son. The righteousness of the righteous is upon himself, and the wrongness of the wrong is upon himself. What is that saying? Take responsibility. It's all on you. Don't say, oh, but my mother, my father, blah, blah, blah. In the words of Bob Newhart, we don't go there. Okay? Go look up Stop It, Bob Newhart. Okay. So does that answer your question? Okay, what Yeshua did was a redeeming, choosing voluntarily to pay a price. This is talking about you are not going to be judged and pay a price for someone else's sin. You're responsible for what you do. So they're not exactly the same thing. Yeshua was not being held accountable for everything you did. He chose to take that price. You see the big difference there? He offered himself up and said, I will take that ultimate death penalty on me. By the way, in doing that, does everybody's death penalty go away? No. It now makes it possible for that death penalty with you to go away. But what's going on in Ezekiel 18 and Deuteronomy 24 is saying, you are not going to be doomed because your father was a sinner. You also can't stand around and go, well, my father was a great hero righteous, and so I must be good too. And Ezekiel 18 explains that in great detail. Okay? Next question. If it's for me, I'm not available. Somebody's phone just rang. Or their alarm went off, actually. Go ahead.
All right. In 23:1, where it talks about the wounding and crushing and the person who's been maimed. It says
423-825. Robert will answer it,
Okay. It says that the person in the community should not enter the community of Yahweh. Wouldn't the same aspect where Ruth says, you are my people, I do as you do, wouldn't somebody in that position be able to...
Okay. This is talking about a physical condition. It's talking about corporate Israel. And praise Yah, we're not in corporate Israel, so nobody has to make this decision. And I'm not being a wise guy. I'm just saying, because we're not really going to understand exactly how this all plays out and what's going on in here as far as the one who's of illegitimate birth. Probably we got people in this room that are of illegitimate birth. That happens a lot through the centuries where people have children out of wedlock and those kind of things. And so don't feel like you're doomed with any of these things. We're not under this corporate understanding. By corporate understanding, I'm saying is that once the nation was a nation as a whole, there were things that to keep that nation safe and set apart and everything else had to be not allowed for whatever reason. That's not to say we understand all those reasons. Just like I don't understand in Exodus 21 why one of the first things Yahweh teaches them is how to deal with Hebrew slaves. I don't get it. One day, hopefully, I will. But it's there. And so we have this, and it's here. Because it says, no one wounded, crushed, or whose member is cut off does enter. No one illegitimate birth does enter. I mean, there's some things that we see here that are clearly pretty straightforward. But it's talking about entering the assembly, not Beth Shalom or MTOI, but the assembly, meaning corporate Israel in the land. Is that clear? And so hopefully someday when we ever get back to corporate Israel in the land, there will be somebody who understands exactly what's going on here if it needs to be implemented at that point. So hopefully that answers the question, Steve. The good thing is we don't have to deal with it now. So if you suffered an injury and it caused some of the verse 1 issues, don't worry about it. If you happen to have, by the way, if you're of illegitimate birth, did you have anything to do with that? Nope. Yahweh's merciful, compassionate, and makes a path for everyone. Amen? Okay, where's the mic? Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Janet. Okay.
Go ahead. Well, just something I know. Another explanation.
Well, hold on.
Oh, sorry. This was just from the Torah study, and Raymond pointed this out, that possibly this wasn't talking about the general public, but could be possibly talking about leadership and elders in terms of that process. I know Raymond talked about that, and he goes a little deeper into that regard, but obviously, Rabbi's explanation for that stands. But that was, I think, an interesting thing in terms of how it played out, possibly certain rules for the elders and the leadership.
Right. And by the way, that doesn't change my point, because even that would not be happening at this point, because it's still for corporate Okay? So that's a possibility. I don't have any challenge with that being possible. It doesn't say it, but it also doesn't say it's wrong. It depends on what we're going to define assembly. It could be the leadership assembly. It could be some other thing. So I'll have to take that as a possible thing. Thankfully, we don't need to figure it out at the moment because it would only apply to that which we do not have at the moment. So until we get there, I'm not worried about it. And neither should you. Okay? All right, Janet.
All right, Rabbi. Chapter 23, verses 21 to 23, when it talks about making a vow to Yahweh, do not delay to pay it, because, well, it says, for Yahweh your Elohim is certainly requiring it of you, and it shall be sin in you. But when you abstain from vowing, it is not sin in you. And so, can you explain to us this issue with vowing? You know, I come from a Catholic background. I was raised Catholic. My whole family is still Catholic. And so there were some teachings that we received there about making offerings to God in exchange of something. I know that's probably completely wrong, but that's the only thing that I could think of when I was reading this vow. And so can you explain what vows are?
No. Next question. I had to do that at least once. Okay, so the vow thing is got to be understood in the context of what that looked like. What it meant was, as Yahweh lives, I will do or I will not do. So vowing and doing it in using his name, invoking his name as a witness to what you say to do. So that doesn't mean that you told somebody, hey, you know, I'm going to do this or do that. You can make all kinds of promises. You can make commitments. You can fall short and fail. We all do that on a regular basis. But it's not necessarily a vow using Yahweh as your stamp of that it will get done. But if you vow, meaning that you actually invoke his name and authority, that as a witness, as Yahweh lives, this is going to happen, you better do it. Okay? And you see that come up where someone said, whatever comes through that door, I'm going to give to Yahweh. And then it was the guy's daughter. That was a big deal. But he made a vow. Okay, that's why it's important, ladies, this chapter that deals with vows, okay, where it talks about, and that's not right here, but the whole idea of when you make vows and a man is in the house, and men, you have to understand responsibility, you have the ability and obligation to annul a vow. So ladies, be careful to make vows and your husband's not around. And listen, ladies, you can pray by yourselves. But if you're making a prayer that's going to include any kind of vow, you better let your husband hear what you're saying. So that he can say, hold on, time out. No, I'm not going to stand for that one. We're not going to vow with that. Now, you could talk to Yahweh and promise all kinds of things. I'm going to do better and I promise to make an effort. That's not a vow. It's a promise. It's not a vow until you invoke that commitment saying, as Yahweh lives. Or in the name of Yahweh, he says, Yahweh, this is how serious I am. It'd be like someone saying, and you can bet the house on it. Well, people aren't really actually betting the house on it. And if it doesn't happen, they're not going to really give you their house. But this, when you invoke it this way, you have to pay it and pay it quickly. It's a vow. So there's a difference in a vow and a promise and a commitment, because we struggle to keep those from time to time. You better. So he says, if you do whatever it is, that's why he says it's not sin. But when you abstain from vowing and you still say what you say and it doesn't actually come, you come through, well, then it's not going to be sin. It's a sin for you to make the vow and not do it. Okay? So you might say, well, marriage, you make vows. Yes, you do. Then you can agree to end that together. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because it's a contract. Because when you make a vow, the vow usually has things saying, I am committing to this, blah, 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 blah. And then you go and fulfill that the best you can. But when you make the vows in a wedding, are you invoking Yahweh's name, or are you saying, I promise to you, and this? Now you're doing it with Yahweh watching and everything, and there's prayer and stuff, but you're not actually invoking Yahweh's name. You didn't say, in sickness and health and everything else, as Yahweh lives. You made vows to each other that are not this kind of thing. Do we follow that? Okay? It's invoking him into the vow. as Yahweh lives, I will do this and this and this. Okay, where's the mic? Okay, in the back, Amy.
Two comments and a question. Comment one is maybe a talit katan could be a solution for Dennis. Something you put on and take off. And obviously you've never been pregnant. Pregnant women spend a lot of time in the bathroom out of necessity. And you can read a lot, one paragraph at a time while you're there. Make good use of that time. The other question is about the vow. When you had said something about if somebody comes to you for counsel and they don't follow that counsel, it was sin. Did you mean it is sin, or is it like this vow thing, or is it just wrong? Is it actually sin if they don't follow your counsel, or is it just wrong and unwise?
No, okay, so Deuteronomy 17 isn't dealing with a vow. Deuteronomy 17 is dealing with a protocol. And Yahweh says, if you do this protocol, you are acting arrogantly if you don't do what is said, and that is evil in his eyes. Okay? There's a lot of things that are evil. And look, committing adultery has nothing to do with a vow necessarily. Murdering, nothing to do with a vow necessarily. Stealing, nothing to do with a vow necessarily. Now, some of you, when I said adultery, think, well, you made vows in your wedding, but it's not this kind of a vow thing. So when you go and you go seek leadership's counsel, it's a protocol, it's a procedural thing. Don't do this unless you are going to be willing to follow directions. Because if you don't, then you're destroying the whole point of the whole deal. You're undermining the integrity of the whole process. So that's where the Deuteronomy 17 thing comes in. Now, as far as the talit katan, I would think that would be a good possible option. Okay, talit katan is like an undershirt that you could wear with tzitzit on it. Okay, and it wouldn't necessarily affect your workout. It just depends on the kind of machinery and what you're doing. And wear it into the gym. You could always take it off and put it right back on. It's like an undershirt or type of thing. We could also make overgarments to do the same thing. But I think that your desire is to wear them as much as you can. That's what matters. And so you're making every effort, and that's what's important, okay? And so we have that. There was something else that you said. You said about the Deuteronomy 17 and going, you said about the talit katan. What was the other thing? Oh, the pregnant women thing. Okay, that was a good point. Okay. So I want to bring up something with the pregnant women thing. If you're a Jew and you were raised a Jew, you were taught that this book is more than just a book. It's not just a piece of paper with a lot of words on it. So some of you have had me, and you've glared at me when I've done this, tell you that you need to get your cell phone off your book. Or I've told you that you need to get it off the floor. Or I've told you that you don't need to put your papers on top of it. As a Jew, we were taught this is above. So if there's a pile, it's on top. It doesn't belong on the floor. It's his word. It doesn't belong in a bathroom because it's his word. So you want to read on the toilet? That's not a problem. Pregnant women, I don't argue that. Read something else, okay? Because this needs to be shown respect because it represents him, okay? Does that make sense? Because I've watched this when we used to be in a building where we had oneg after services and we had to reset the room to bring the tables out, and we told people they needed to move your stuff. They just took their Bible and put it on the floor. I'm like, no, please don't do that. It's a mindset. It's not a sin anywhere in the Bible. There's no Torah that says, thou shalt not put your Bible on the floor. But it shows a mindset of not understanding the honoring. See, that's why a Jew will walk in their house and honor, and mindset-wise, touch the word, the scroll that's inside the mezuzah, and bring it to their lips. It reminds them of something. And so the same thing when you put your stuff together, your scriptures should not be under anything. The only thing it can be on top of, or have something on top of it, is another Bible. So you maybe have more than one. You can stack them up. That's okay. I'm not having a problem with that. Because it's still the word with the word, etc. But you would not, if you had multiple things, you would not take your notebook or your papers and put them on top of your Bible. Now that's just a mindset. If you do it, it's not breaking any commandments. I'm trying to encourage you to think a certain way, be in awareness of a certain thing. So this is not new Talmudic stuff I expect you all to do because it's now being elevated to Torah. But don't be surprised if I see you do it that I say, please don't do that. Not like shame on you for doing it, just please don't do that. Have more of a mindset to honor his word. And a lot of you clap, so I think you all agree. So that's good, okay? And then teach your children the same thing. You know, some of you just throw it on the table where the food is and food's splashing on it and everything else. Let's protect the word. Let's honor and respect that. It's not that this is a special book. It's what's in it that's so special. So how you treat that which is his reflects on how you treat him. Make sense? Okay, who's next? Okay, Christine.
So regarding the illegitimate birth and entering the assembly, or not entering the assembly, looking in Matthew chapter 1 and seeing how Perez came from Judah with Tamar, and that's also the lineage of Yeshua, how does that work?
Okay, hold on. Let me get back to Deuteronomy because I closed my Bible up. That was in 20, where were we, in 23, right? Okay, so there are those that will point out that Messiah can't be Messiah because look at his bloodline. Look at his genealogy. In verse 3, it said, an Ammonite or a Moabite doesn't enter the assembly, even unto the 10th generation. And so what we find is, for that one, that Ruth is not 10 generations even from when this is said. She's not even 10 generations, let alone coming into the assembly. But we know that Ruth was no longer Moabite when she came in. So which is the one, now you're talking about one that was of illegitimate birth? Or what is the example you're trying to give?
So in Matthew, it's the lineage of Yeshua, so...
I know, but what was the person's issue? As you're saying there was an illegitimate birth, or what were you saying there?
The Judah and Tamar brought forth Perez, but that was an illegitimate birth, right?
Why would it be illegitimate?
So maybe I misunderstand that story.
Didn't we read the Levirate? Didn't we read the Levirate rules? Remember the sons? Remember the whole thing came before Jacob? And actually who was right and who was wrong? There wasn't anything illegitimate there.
Oh.
She forced the issue.
Right.
Okay? Because he dropped the ball. And you notice that the ruling that came down through Jacob is that she was fine and that Judah was wrong. Not wrong for being with her, wrong for not doing the process of continuing to bring the son a child. So there's no illegitimacy here.
Okay.
Okay?
Well, thank you for clearing it up.
Oh, you're welcome. Now, of course, in our very, sophisticated understanding, we don't understand this whole Levirate thing and giving her a baby and all that other stuff. So you can't think of Tamar or Tamar as being just someone who acted like a prostitute and did all these other things to get pregnant. She was trying to do what the law said. I'm supposed to have a baby for my husband. And when he died, you were supposed to give me another. Well, that happened, and he died. And they were like, I'm running out of sons. You're like a black widow. Right? And so she brought the issue to where it was supposed to. So if you read the way it plays out in Genesis, she's never pointed at as doing anything wrong. Okay? Now, it probably wasn't the right way to handle things in a protocol way, but she accomplished what should have been accomplished. She got the child that she needed to have. And that child was now accredited to the husband that died. Just like if I have now taken the wife of one of my brothers has passed, and that woman has a child, it's not mine. It goes in the name of that brother to represent his line that would have been ended. Okay, so there's no illegitimacy here.
Okay, thank you. I've
You're
been
welcome.
confused about that.
Okay. And that's a great question, by the way. I mean, there's no reason not to. Because you know what? If you don't understand from a Hebrew mindset and really understand all the Torah things that were going on and the Genesis things going on, that would certainly appear like, wait a minute, that's not kosher, so to speak. Because that's not the way we do things at this point. And we haven't done them this way for a long time. So we're so disconnected from that cultural understanding and behavior. When was the last time anybody's seen this be actually done? Where a brother died and then, the wife went to the next brother and that kind of thing. I've never seen it done. Okay, so we get disconnected from it. Okay, where's the mic? That's right, Judah had said that. That was the line, that she's more righteous than I in this matter. Okay? Okay, where was the mic? Okay. Yochanan? If the light's on, it means it's off. It means that it's muted.
Oh, okay. My question is more general about Torah. I just wanted to preface it by saying I had a friend for the longest time who was a believer, who was also a philosopher, a teacher in philosophy in college, and so I learned a lot.
Okay, let me interrupt you for 1 second, just for the sake of everybody here. Yochanan, we want to welcome him, really doesn't know what I've taught, so when he uses some of you may be thinking he'll talk a certain way or ask certain things. I'm excited for him because this is all new as far as experiencing what we do here. And so, his family was looking for a place to keep Sukkot and they could get to and everything else, and he found us. And so, just bear that in mind when he's, because I don't know what he's going to ask. I'm just saying in my conversation with him, he does not have the background that some of you have in knowing all of the foundational stuff that we've taught here. So go ahead.
Yeah, so I was saying is that, anyways, he rubbed off on me over the years, and I got to learn to think a little bit like, a philosopher, and he was, like I said, he was a believer in Torah and an observant, and he really emphasized, in his personal life, and as he he moved around a lot because he was a teacher, and he really emphasized, how there are many, many ways to interpret literature, and specifically in this case, scripture, and so to bring it more to the point, my question would be to you is I've heard you expounding on Torah last couple of days, and you emphasize sometimes it's really corporate, and then other times you say, "Oh, this needs to be done," or such and such. And how are you discerning that in general? I mean, you must have some kind of what's the word? There's some religious word for it, for discerning or for interpreting scripture. So,
well, that's a good question. Okay, so what I teach on a regular basis, Yochanan, and just so and everybody's familiar with this, is the idea of context. And with the context, I say you have to ask these questions. You have to know who's doing the speaking. In this case, it's Moshe. It's Moses. Who is he talking to? He's talking to Israel about to go into the land. And some of the instructions he's giving are about how that group, as a group, is to function and the ramifications of how they function in terms of blessing and cursings. And there's other things that are clearly individual. You shall not murder. You shall not steal. But here he's saying that in the corporate assembly, when the nation has its place, its judges, and all of the other things in place, the nation can count on having rain. Well, that's not an individual thing. I mean, if you sin or don't sin, it's not going to affect whether or not it rains on everybody else. And the whole thing about fertility, you and the animals, the whole thing about having your grain and the way your ground is going to be and how fertile that will be. And so it's not even using discernment. It's just looking at, in the context, what's being talked about. Is it talking about the group as a whole? Or is it talking about individuals within the group? And so there's, in every society, there's certain things that are, corporate to the entity. I mean, there's things that the United States or Canada or Sweden or whatever country, Austria, wherever you're from, does as a nation. Makes decisions that affect things as a nation. There's other things that are the responsibility of the individual. And it really doesn't matter or affect the whole nation as a whole. But when the nation did certain things, it brought certain curses upon the nation as a whole. The nation of Judah got taken into Babylon because of things that they were doing that affected the nation. The individuals are still having their own problems because they were sinning, and it still affected them personally and individually. But then there were certain things that were national. And that's actually what we read about in Deuteronomy, and you can see it play out with the northern kingdom being taken away and dispersed, and with the southern kingdom going into captivity in Babylon. They were fulfillments of what was said, if as a nation you don't do these things,